Chapter 30. Madame Yun wanted to continue cursing, but was interrupted by Ning Shu. Madam should already know about what happened yesterday. The case was solved by Lord Wei, which proves that the curse was not placed by me. As for who is the culprit, I will wait for Lord Wei's final judgment. You don't believe what I said, but you should believe Lord Wei's words. Moreover, I just offered to help you, which is actually beneficial to both of us. If the culprit can be found, then young Master Yun's disaster can be solved and his life can be saved. Me. Because of these things that happen one after another around me, the whole capital is laughing at my Ning family and scolding me, Ning Shu. If the case can be solved smoothly, I can also get rid of the infamy and can raise my head in the capital in the future. Madame Yun glanced at her contemptuously and turned around to order people to drive her away. The Jingji government hasn't found any clues until now. Why should I believe you? Ning Shu sighed softly. Her regret deepened. Because the Jingji government can't find out. She suddenly stopped speaking halfway. When she walked to Madame Yun's side and was only a foot away from her, making sure that only the two of them could hear her, she said in a low voice, "Even if they can find out, they won't be able to find out the truth." Her voice was soft and gentle, like the clouds in the sky, with the unique sweetness of a young girl, but what she said made Madame Yun's complexion change immediately. If what I found is true, young Master Yun has a four-petal-like red spot on the side of his neck. After hearing that Imperial Dr. Su discovered it, he immediately went to the palace to report it to His Majesty. His Majesty ordered the Jingji government and the Supreme Court to jointly investigate this case, but no one is allowed to reveal half of it. Imperial Dr. Su was even more tight-lipped and avoided talking about young Master Yun's condition. Madame Yun wondered how I learned about it. This little girl doesn't want to hide it. Yes, I have sent spies around your house. You are so bold. This little girl has no choice. Ning Shu showed full sincerity. If Madame Yun is still unwilling to believe me at this moment, I have to share my last secret with you to show my sincerity. Madame Yun stared at her suspiciously, her eyes filled with distrust. What secret? Ning Shu slowly walked to the small table next to Madame Yun. Reaching out with her slender white fingertips, she dipped her finger into the teacup that Madame Yun had smashed earlier. Then she wrote a few words on the small table stroke by stroke. The young girl's fingertips were soft, and the tea was transparent. It was only 7 words, and the wind blew it dry, leaving no trace behind. However, this caused Madame Yun's heart to tremble, and she almost lost her composure. She took 3 steps back to put some distance between herself and Ning Shu. "I don't believe it," she shouted. She said she didn't believe it, but she already believed it, because she had already waved her sleeve and chased all the servants out. Because the words Ning Shu had written just now were, "Chi-san also died from this disease." It was as if Madame Yun had peeked at a frightening heavenly secret from the 9th heaven. She collapsed onto the chair, unable to make a sound as she gasped for breath. A few months ago, the news of 3rd young Master Chi's sudden death was known to everyone in the capital city. But who had ever heard that there was such a secret behind his death? What did this mean? It meant that her son would follow in the same footsteps as Chi-san, who had been sitting and waiting for death. Chi-san's cause of death was covered up by the hand of the heavens, and now, her son would also have the same fate. Heavens! Heavens! Cloud Leaf was her only flesh and blood in this life. Just as Madame Yun's heart was filled with grief and indignation, and she had no one to rely on, she heard the slender young girl in front of her speak again. "You can think about it now. Are the officials personally sent by the emperor all around your residence to protect the Yun residents? Or do they have other intentions? After you have thought it through, you can consider my daughter's suggestion. Madam, please give me 15 days. Madame Yun used all her strength to grab onto her clothes, as if she was grabbing onto her last life-saving straw. Her voice was dry and hoarse as she said, "If you can't find the culprit who harmed my son within 15 days, what will you do?" Ning Shu solemnly said, "I will personally write 1,000 words of self-reproach and paste it in front of the Yun residence's door. I will also kneel for a day and a night to apologize to you." When she heard that Chi Huijin had died from this disease, Madame Yun's heart had already been shaken. When she heard Ning Shu's promise, her thoughts changed and she immediately gritted her teeth and said, All right. Then I will give you a chance. Not for anything else, but because she had no other choice. Chapter 31. By the time she left the Yun residence, it was already past 5 in the afternoon. Ningshu let out a long sigh. Just now, she had coaxed and lied, mixing in 50% truth and 40% falsehood, adding a spoonful of false feelings. Then she had mixed the truth and falsehood evenly and poured it all into Madame Yun's mind. Finally, she had coaxed her into opening her golden mouth and allowing her to enter the residence to investigate the case. It really took away half of her life, especially when she had to be on guard against Madame Yun's iron palm. It was not easy. It was not easy at all. After she let out that long sigh, she boarded the carriage with the help of Forsythia. She immediately said to the coachman Zigue, "Let's go to the southern pacifying prince's residence first." Forsythia blinked. "Are we going to find His Highness the Crown Prince to discuss the case?" Ningshu shook her head. "There's no rush. Let's first find him to get some money in advance." She had just made a vow and even made a promise to kneel down and beg for forgiveness. Shouldn't she let him bleed a little first to appease her unbalanced heart? "I want to eat the Chasing Cloud and Chasing Moon restaurant." After half an hour, Ningshu sat in front of Xiaohoqing and said firmly, "Why?" Xiaohoqing stood in the corridor and pinched a few pieces of bird food between his fingers. He quietly waited for the birds on the shelf to jump down and peck away until they were full. Ningshu said very straightforwardly, "Because it's the most expensive, because it's the most delicious, because it's the most difficult to eat, and also because my heart is extremely tired. For reasons, Your Highness the Crown Prince can choose any one of them." Xiaohoqing did not even turn his head. He spread out his palm and let the bold bird peck at his palm. "I seem to have heard someone say yesterday in front of the Duke's residence that the Duke's residence has deep ancestral roots and should not be lacking in money." How could she hear that he was using her bold words yesterday to mock her? However, Ningshu had her own reasons. "I am not lacking in money, but it's different." "How is it different?" Ningshu said matter-of-factly. "Although all the money in this world looks the same, there is a difference. His own money was different from other people's money. If he could spend other people's money, why would he not spend his own money? Besides, I'm investigating this case not only for myself, but also for Your Highness. It's not too much to ask you to treat me to a meal." Hui Mo, who had been listening, lowered his head and pondered. He couldn't help but nod. He felt that what she said made sense. Xiaohoqing sneered. He was not in a hurry to pay attention to her. He waited for the 4 or 5 birds on the shelf to peck at the food. After a long time, he scattered the rest of the bird food in his hand. "Let's go." The most profitable place in the capital was not some brothel or gambling house, but the Chasing Cloud and Moon Chasing Pavilion. It was owned by the emperor's youngest brother, Prince Ku Xiaominglan. There was no need to talk about the extravagance and liveliness. There were 2 wonderful things about the restaurant. One was the storyteller inside, nicknamed the all-knowing man in Jianghu. He had a glib tongue and knew all the latest and most interesting things in the capital. There was nothing he didn't know, and there was nothing he didn't dare to talk about. The second was the delicacies in the restaurant. Everyone thought that the most delicious food in the world should be in the imperial palace. In fact, it was a big mistake. Although the chefs of the royal kitchen had exquisite culinary skills and could be called the best in the world, there were many rules in the palace. Every delicacy that was carefully cooked and brought out while still hot from the royal kitchen had to go through multiple inspections and layers of testing for poison. Therefore, no matter how delicious the food was, the heat would have dissipated by the time it was served. How could it be compared to the Chasing Cloud and Moon Chasing Pavilion? The taste was not worse than the one in the imperial palace. Therefore, the people in the capital all flocked to it. Needless to say, the price was high. Some people queued for 3 months and still might not be able to eat it. Now Ningshu could sit in the private room on the 2nd floor of the Chasing Cloud and Moon Chasing Pavilion and taste the delicacies in front of her. It was all thanks to His Highness's extraordinary face. Take the 4 Seas dragon soup in front of her as an example. The ingredients used were top-notch japonica rice and dried seafood. It was simmered for 8 hours on low heat to extract the freshness and blend it into the rice. After the japonica rice had completely melted, she took the fresh shrimp and crab that had just been fished out from the water in the morning. Only the shrimp tail and crab roe meat were added to the soup. At the same time, she took a pot of shrimp head and fried it until it was yellow and glistening with oil. Finally, she sprinkled it with a handful of green onions and took it out of the pot. The taste was so fresh that it could make one's tongue fall off. Ning Shu savored the soup while looking at the opposite side. There were more than 10 dishes on the table. After consulting with Xiaoqing, Huiyemo only chose 3 or 4 dishes and placed them on a small plate to Xiaoqing's right. Xiaoqing picked up the bowl and chopsticks and casually ate a few mouthfuls before he stopped moving. His body leaned against the carved armrest and quietly rubbed the small piece of human bone in his palm. The evening haze reflected on the side of his face through the carved window lattice. It was obviously orange-purple, but there was no warmth in it at all. It seemed especially cold, and also especially, if the young girls downstairs saw this, they would probably scream until their throats were broken. Fortunately, the most important guests of the Chasing Cloud and Moon Chasing Pavilion did not enter from the main hall on the first floor. Instead, they entered from the side door through a special secret staircase that led directly to the private room on the second floor. As long as they sat in the private room, they would be able to see the bustling scene downstairs. For example, in the main hall, everyone was listening to the storytelling with great interest. If you want to ask about the most popular person in the capital, you can't not mention Ning Shu, the pearl of Duke Ning's family. Yesterday, there was a big commotion in front of the Duke's residence. It was really wonderful. Chapter 32. After the ceremony, young Master Yun vomited blood and fainted. He did not get better these few days. Instead, his condition worsened. Even the imperial physicians could not cure him. Imperial Censor Yun and his wife were about to cry their eyes out. Suddenly, a servant dug out a pouch in the courtyard. There was a jade hairpin and a charm in the pouch. Guess who had it? Bai Shaoxing slapped the wooden board. It was Lady Ning. A spectator immediately said, "She wanted to harm her own husband? There is such a vicious woman in this world." Everyone around him was suspicious. Could it be that her previous husbands all died at her hands? No, wait for me to explain in detail. Bai Shaoxing shook his head and continued. Imperial Censor Yun immediately took the pouch to the emperor. The emperor personally ordered the Jingji government to arrest her immediately. Thus, they came to the entrance of the Duke's public house. They saw tens of thousands of officials surrounding the Duke's public house. Ning Shu wanted to escape in a hurry. Halfway through the dog hole, Lord Wei came down from the sky and caught her. On the second floor, Ning Shu heard the word dog hole. The chopsticks that were about to reach her lips paused and almost hit her teeth. Huiyemo, who was beside her, laughed and was secretly pinched by Forsythia. When she looked at him again, she found that Xiahou, who had always been as cold as ice, seemed to have a slight smile on his lips at this moment. Tisei. Fortunately, Ning Shu was always open-minded. She did not mind and continued to enjoy her meal. Then she heard the noise coming from downstairs. Ning Shu cried and cried. Naturally, she refused to admit it. Lord Wei analyzed carefully and found a loophole. He angrily asked her what happened if she did not poison him when she left the public house secretly 3 days ago. Ning Shu was speechless. Then, she saw His Highness the Sixth Prince leading the army over and protecting Ning Shu behind him. He was going to fight for Ning Shu. When a bloody battle was about to break out, a carriage came from afar. Who do you think it is? Bai Shaoxing had just finished when someone became impatient. Who is it? Bai Shaoxing rolled his eyes. It is the Prince of Nanping, Xiaoqing, who just came to the capital not long ago. Ehe. They heard that Xiahou Shitzi soared out of the carriage and said in loud and clear voice, 3 days ago, Lady Ning was with me until daybreak. Everyone was shocked. What? His Highness the Crown Prince had just entered the capital. How could he be together with Ning Shu? That's heir of Xiahou. The young girls at the banquet tugged at their skirts, and one of them couldn't help but say, "This is impossible. His Highness will never take a fancy to her." Lord Wei then asked, "Why is your Highness with her?" Xiahou Shitzi leisurely told me that 3 days ago, When he went to the tomb of the third young master of the Qi family, he happened to see that Lady Ning wanted to commit suicide in front of the third young master of the Qi family. In the end, Bai Shaoxing sighed softly. So your highness couldn't bear it, and decided to lend a helping hand. The young girls who were worried a moment ago were all relieved. Another person asked, then what is the explanation for the case of the talisman in the pouch? Until now, it seems that the culprit who buried the talisman has not been caught. Bai Shaoxing took out a fan and opened it with a swoosh, covering half of his mouth. He pretended to whisper to the guests, "Haha, that's a mystery. I only heard one thing. The first wife of the Duke's mansion recently moved to the ancestral hall to recite scriptures. You can speculate on the mystery, it's not just me talking nonsense." The guests pondered carefully and smacked their lips. I see. People say that noble families are good, but they don't know how troublesome they are. It's not as good as us ordinary families. A middle-aged man in the corner chimed in. This Lady Ning is really a strange person. First, there was the fearless Cloud Leaf, then there was the sixth prince who didn't fear public anger to protect her. Now even Xiahou Shizhi, who just returned to the capital, is involved with her. What kind of charm does she have? Oh right, there's also the dead third young master of the Qi family. She just got divorced from young Master Yin, and then went to the tomb of the third young master of the Qi family to commit suicide. Among these people, who do you think she fell in love with? Chapter 33. Bai Shaoxing smiled again. Everyone may not know, but that Ning Shu is the reincarnation of the heavenly fox star. This star is the most affectionate, loving everyone she sees. Just like today, she willingly came to the residence of Yin and begged Madame Yin to give her a chance to take care of the unconscious Cloud Leaf. She even shouted that if he doesn't wake up, she will be buried with him. She kowtowed 10 times before Madame Yin was moved and finally agreed. Everyone was stunned by this shocking Lady Ning. Isn't she a fickle woman? No matter how magnanimous Ning Shu was, her face darkened when she was inexplicably labeled as a fickle woman. To hell with the reincarnation of the celestial fox star. They were praising her too much. Someone else smacked their lips. If she really willingly takes care of young Master Yin, she's not a bad woman. The young girl who had just said that Xia Hoqing would never fall for Ning Shu jumped up and said in disgust, "Disgusting." Then she left with her servants. On the second floor, Xia Hoqing asked faintly, "Who is it?" Ning Shu shook her head with a sigh without looking. Third young Master Qi's sister Qi Juanyu. Xia Hoqing supported his chin with his hand, a faint smile on his face. So, the reason you found for yourself is to go to the residence of Yin tomorrow to take care of Cloud Leaf? Xia Hoqing's pale chin peeked out from under the fox fur coat. He mocked, talented. Ning Shu could not help but blush, thinking about how she would have to go to the residence of Yin for the next 15 days. She lamented. However, who could give her a better idea? Qi Juanyu's departure did not interrupt the bustle downstairs. Bai Shaoxing paused for a while and turned the topic back to Cloud Leaf. Young Master Yun's strange illness is also strange. Since that day he vomited blood, he has been in a coma. When he wakes up occasionally, his whole body is numb and he can't even move a finger. He's like a wooden puppet, as if his soul has been taken. Taken. Yes. According to the servants of the residence of Yun, young Master Yun's courtyard has been haunted by red ghostly shadows. They suddenly appear in the middle of the night and disappear in the blink of an eye. It really makes people think of female ghosts chasing after souls, just like the unsolved case from 3 years ago. The following words became more and more suspenseful. The sky was not dark yet, but it made people's hair stand on end for no reason. Forsythia whispered timidly, "Miss, are there really ghosts in this world?" "Of course." "Ah." Forsythia's expression changed. Ning Shu finished her meal, and then picked up the sparrow tongue that had been delivered to her. But after the death of an ordinary person, their soul would only linger in the mortal realm for 7 days at most. After that, they would be sucked into the netherworld and set foot on the road to the Yellow Springs. During these 7 days, the ghosts would only wander around aimlessly, unable to harm anyone. Even those who had committed all kinds of evil in their lives would be immediately taken away by the black and white impermanence after death. and directly thrown into the 18 levels of hell. If ghosts could really harm people, how many unsolved cases would happen every day? Living people like us don't have to live anymore. How did Lady Ning know? Huema, who was beside her, interrupted curiously. Ning Shu tapped the tip of her nose lightly. Just take it as a guess. She was probably the only person in the world who had the experience of touring the netherworld for 7 lifetimes. Xiaoqing kept the bone in his palm and slowly got up. He moved to the front of the carved window, with his back facing the bustling crowd downstairs. You insisted on coming here today just to let me hear this? Yes. Ning Shu stopped joking when it came to serious matters, and immediately said seriously. Today, after I received Madame Yun's approval, I used the excuse of taking care of young Master Yin to find out more information. Then I heard this strange incident, and it was even more bizarre than what Bai Xiaoxing said. According to young Master Yun's personal servant, Chu He, actually young Master Yin had symptoms before he married me. He often felt dizzy and weak. Then a red ghostly shadow appeared in his courtyard. Chapter 34. Ning Shu said slowly. At first no one took it to heart, thinking that it was just a moment of blur. Cloud Leaf's dizziness was also treated by a doctor, who said that it was due to being busy recently. He left after prescribing a sedative. But no one expected that the frequency of the ghostly figures would increase, and Cloud Leaf's symptoms would become more obvious, until the day she suddenly vomited blood in the wedding hall. That night, a pool of blood suddenly appeared beside Cloud Leaf's pillow. 2 days later, the manservant Chu He saw the red-clothed female ghost walk into young Master Yun's courtyard. He was so scared that he fainted. When he woke up, the female ghost was already gone, and there was another pool of blood in Cloud Leaf's room. The blood actually condensed into a word, danger. Forsythia's heart still skipped a beat when she heard that frightening situation for the second time. It was also because of this that Madame Yin was so furious when she dug out her young Mrs. Jade hairpin. She firmly believed that the female ghost was attracted by the amulet wrapped around the hairpin. Ning Shu continued speaking in a low and gentle voice. Putting aside whether the female ghost's blood letter is true or not, I have a doubt in my heart. There are so many suspicious points about Cloud Leaf's illness that have not been spread, but this one was spread to the Chasing Cloud and Moon Tower. I believe that it will soon spread throughout the capital from here. I don't believe in ghosts and gods, so? Outside the tower, the sun had already set, and the lanterns had just been lit. The warm orange light leaped into her eyes, like stars and the moon. I suspect that someone is trying to cover up the truth about Cloud Leaf's poisoning, using the story of the female ghost to divert attention. The noise behind him was noisy, but in contrast, the girl's voice in front of him was low and gentle. It tickled his ears. Xiaoqing frowned. He paused for a moment, then raised his hand and gently knocked on the window frame. There is a second possibility, which is the exact opposite of your guess. He put forward his own point of view. After His Majesty heard about young Master Yun's murder, he sent the Supreme Court and the Jingji government to investigate. The relevant details must not be leaked. Only the word haunted is harmless and will not cause fear, so it can be spread. Ning Shu lowered her eyes and thought for a moment. She quickly understood what he meant. I understand. What you're trying to say is that someone was afraid that the Cloud Leaf incident wouldn't be noticed, so they purposely spread the female ghost story to attract attention and attract people to investigate further. This is another way of thinking, and it makes a lot of sense. She raised her head and said solemnly, but no matter what, the Cloud Leaf case is more complicated than I thought. So, Xiaoqing guessed that she had something to say next. Ning Shu's eyes lit up. She immediately put on a smile and looked at Xiaoqing. Her eyes were full of eagerness. I would like to ask your highness to temporarily lend me this highly skilled and quick-witted brother Huemo. She still remembered that Huemo's autopsy speed and skill that night were both excellent. She was afraid that she couldn't find a better one in the entire capital. As for those who were proficient in autopsy, their medical skills would not be bad. The capital that she wanted in advance was exactly this. As soon as she finished speaking, Xiaoqing showed a look of understanding. Ah. After such a big circle, she finally revealed her true intention. She even schemed against the people around him, He was wrong before. This woman's heart was full of twists and turns, not 3,000, but 30,000. Ignoring her, he waved his hand and asked Huema to help him put on his cloak. Then he lifted his leg and left. Although it's my duty to solve this case, the poison is also closely related to your highness. Helping me is equivalent to helping yourself. With Brother Huimo's help, I believe that the time to solve the mystery will be greatly reduced. And with Brother Huimo's supervision, seeing Brother Huimo is like seeing your highness. I will do my best to live up to your highness's trust. Ning Shu hurried to catch up with him and used her flowery words to the extreme. But his pace was very fast. In the blink of an eye, he had already boarded the carriage from the threshold of the VIP passage. Ning Shu sighed in her heart. Just as the carriage was about to move, she heard the person in the carriage say, "Let's go. Within 3 days, Huema will appear in front of you." The carriage drove away leisurely, taking the people in the carriage with it into the waning lights. At the end of the night, Ning Shu's lips, which had just drooped, quietly lifted, revealing a sly smile. The slightly cool night wind blew the various colored lanterns on the street. After leaving the Chasing Cloud and Moon Chasing restaurant, Forsythia carefully put a watercolored cloak on Ning Shu. The color was actually very specific, but Ning Shu's skin was very white. It was like a soft red seeping out of the snow jade. Under the contrast of the watercolored cloak, it looked particularly fresh. "Miss, are we still going to the residence of Yin tonight?" Ning Shu nodded and smiled sweetly. "Of course I'm going." It took her so much effort to find the opportunity to investigate the case in the residence of Yin. Moreover, she only had 15 days. How could she waste it? Seeing was believing. She wanted to see whether the person hiding in the residence of Yin was a human or a ghost. Chapter 35. The treatment of the savior and the perpetrator was naturally different. Because they had reached an agreement, Madame Yun's attitude towards her was much better. For the time being, she would not use her ultimate move, the iron palm, again. She even specially sent someone to welcome her at the main entrance of the Yun residence. It was just that the person who came to greet her really made Ning Shu feel flattered. Because this person was her biggest rival in the entire capital, Qi Juanyu, who had just heard her name in the Chasing Clouds and Chasing Moon Pavilion, and had spurned her with disgust. Ever since Qi Huijin was engaged to her, he died of a serious illness in less than a month. Qi Juanyu saw her as a thorn in her flesh. No matter where she went, Qi Juanyu would give her tit for tat. For example, at this moment, a pair of eyes were fiercely glaring at her, as if an arrow could shoot out from her eyes and pierce through her heart. "You actually have the face to come here." Ning Shu glanced at her, and found that she was wearing the same clothes as when she was at the residence of Yun. She was afraid that once she heard that she was coming to the residence of Yun, she would rush to the residence of Yun to stop her. However, Qi Juanyu's mother and Madame Yun were sisters. Madame Yun was her aunt and Cloudleaf was her cousin. As long as she came to the residence of Yun, she would not be able to avoid this. Letting out a sigh in her heart, Ning Shu raised her smiling face and asked doubtfully, "Why, is the residence of Yun some kind of gate to hell? Isn't Miss Juanyu also here? Then what's wrong with me visiting the residence of Yun?" Qi Juanyu pointed at her hatefully and began to talk like a knife. "You poisonous woman! You haven't forgotten, have you? You killed my elder brother a few months ago. Now you want to continue to harm my second cousin. Your intentions are simply terrible." Ning Shu was not angry at all and shrugged. "If Miss Juanyu thinks that I killed your elder brother, you can take the evidence to the Ministry of Justice or the Supreme Court to sue me and ask them to come and investigate. I will wait patiently for the trial." Qi Juanyu sneered, thinking that she was simply ridiculous. "Evidence? Who in the entire capital doesn't know that you, Ning Shu, are destined to be a jinx? What proof do you need?" Ning Shu faintly glanced at her and said, "So it turns out that when His Majesty governs my great you, he doesn't rely on the law to determine the criminal law, but on the rumors in the marketplace. I've learned something today." Qi Zhanyu was caught off guard and choked. If she dared to say yes, it would be a great disrespect to His Majesty. If she said no, then she wouldn't be able to find trouble with Ning Shu today. This made her so angry that her face turned red. Qi Zhanyu gritted his teeth as he spoke. Do you think that just because you have the power of the House of High Duke, the Lu Bo's household will be afraid of you? Let me tell you. Today I will avenge my elder brother. After saying that, she raised her hand and sent a slap towards Ning Shu. Ning Shu's eyes swept and slightly leaned to the side to avoid the slap. Then, she took the opportunity to grab Qi Zhanyu's wrist in her palm. When she was slapped by Madame Yin, it wasn't that she couldn't avoid it, but that she tolerated a grieving mother. It didn't mean that anyone could reach their hand to her face. Ning Shu's smile faded. She looked at Qi Zhanyu's distorted face and said, "Are you jealous of me?" Qi Zhanyu tried hard to pull her hand back, but failed several times. Her face was extremely ugly. "I'm jealous of you?" "Jealous of what?" Ning Shu said matter-of-factly. "Jealous of my beauty." Qi Zhanyu's eyes trembled. "What?" Ning Shu suddenly realized. "Then you're jealous that I'm smarter than you." Qi Zhanyu's face turned green and she burst out with vulgarities. "Nonsense." Ning Shu finally magnanimously released her wrist and said with a smile, "Since you're not jealous, then why do you keep pestering me? If Miss Zhanyu doesn't have any other advice, then I'll go in first." After saying that, Ning Shu smiled and bowed to Qi Zhanyu. Then, she lifted her left foot and stepped through the door of the residence of Yin with Forsythia. Qi Zhanyu's flustered and exasperated voice came from behind. "Ning Shu, I curse you. I curse you to be alone for the rest of your life, to be trampled by all the men in the world, to be unmarried, and to die a horrible death." The experience of dying a horrible death was too strong. Ning Shu was unmoved and continued to step forward with her right leg. However, Qi Zhanyu's next sentence was even more vicious. "I curse your whole family to die a horrible death. Die without a complete corpse." The smile in Ning Shu's eyes completely disappeared. She turned around and slapped Qi Zhanyu hard on the face. Chapter 36. At the same time as the slap was delivered, Ning Shu exclaimed, "Ah! Ghost shadow." Qi Zhanyu was distracted for a moment, and did not dodge. The other servants who were watching were also shocked by the ghost shadow, and no one reacted to stop Ning Shu. When Ning Shu took her hand away, Qi Zhanyu's face was red and burning. She was stunned for a moment, and was about to withdraw her hand when she heard Ning Shu's apologetic and panicked expression. "Miss Zhanyu, I'm really sorry. I just suddenly caught a glimpse of a red shadow floating on your face. I was afraid that the female ghost in the mansion was going to possess your body, so I had to hit you in a hurry. I presume Miss Zhanyu won't bear a grudge against me?" Ning Shu looked at her carefully, as if she was sure that there was no shadow of the female ghost around her. Only then did she feel completely relieved. She patted her chest and said, "Look, that ghost has left. That's great." Her actions were perfect and reasonable, all for the sake of Qi Zhanyu. It was impeccable. Qi Zhanyu covered her face and pointed at her with all her strength. She could not say a word and almost fainted. Ning Shu took the handkerchief handed over by Forsythia, and carefully wiped the hand that had just slapped Qi Zhanyu. Previously, she had been thinking about Qi Huaijin's sudden death, and it was reasonable for Qi Zhanyu to vent her anger on her. Every time Qi Zhanyu provoked her, she tried to avoid and did not argue with her. But Qi Zhanyu should not have touched her family. If she tolerated it, then what was the meaning of this rebirth? After wiping her hand, Ning Shu folded the handkerchief and said to Qi Zhanyu lightly, "If Miss Zhanyu is okay, I'm really going in this time." Qi Zhanyu covered her face and roared, "Stop." Ning Shu stood still and looked at her with a smile, looking forward to what she would do next. Qi Zhanyu couldn't hold it in any longer. She clenched her fists tightly and asked with difficulty, "What is your relationship with Xiahou Shizhi?" Ning Shu simply didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Today, she had mustered so many people to look for trouble. On the surface, it was to complain about injustice for her brother and second cousin. But in fact, the crux of the matter was here. It really made her speechless. Just because of a moment of jealousy, she wanted to curse someone else's entire family. If he didn't teach her a lesson, it wouldn't be right. Ning Shu's eyes flashed with a sly light. She spread out her hands and said in a casual tone, "What can it be? It's just because of that night." Hearing these words, Qi Chuyu's face, which had turned red from hatred, immediately froze. What do you mean? Who in the capital did not know that Qi Juanyu had one extreme joy and one extreme hatred? What she hated the most was Ning Shu. She hated Ning Shu for causing the death of her most respected and beloved brother. What she was most happy about was the crown prince of Nanping. Qi Juanyu had admired the crown prince since she was young. She had said that she would only marry the crown prince in this life. She had even made a big joke of two women fighting for the same husband with the 13th princess. She had become the laughingstock of the entire capital, but she still did not repent. At this time, when she suddenly heard Ning Shu's words, she was stunned. What nonsense are you talking about? This is impossible. How could the crown prince like someone with a ruined reputation like you? Just based on your status of being married 3 times, he will never marry you in this life. Ning Shu's face revealed a sad and satisfied expression. She sighed softly and said, Yes, the crown prince is so peerless and has an outstanding status. How could people not yearn for him? With my lowly status, I don't dare to dream of marrying him as his wife. But after that night with him, and yesterday, he stood up for me at the gate of the Duke's estate and protected my safety. I have no regrets in this life. She didn't lie about what kind of night it was. Whether it was a chance encounter while digging a grave or under the moonlight, it was all Qi Juanyu's blind guess. In any case, it was enough to anger her to death. Qi Juanyu's face turned white. Her eyes widened and she flew into a rage. This must be nonsense. You shut up immediately. I don't believe anything. I'm telling you, you can't dream of touching the crown prince in this life. I won't allow it. I won't allow it. Ning Shu said indifferently, If you don't allow it, what does it have to do with me? In any case, my relationship with the crown prince isn't something you can shake with just a few words. There was no messy relationship, only a life and death alliance relationship. Naturally, it couldn't be shaken. Qi Juanyu was so angry that she stomped her feet. She couldn't care less about her ladylike demeanor, and almost slipped, successfully teasing her into an angry little hen. Ning Shu almost couldn't hold back her laughter. She decided to add one last strong medicine. Ning Shu leaned close to her ear, and playfully winked at her. Her charm was natural. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you that the crown prince has a very cute birthmark on his right shoulder. Plop. Qi Juanyu completely fainted. The maidservants beside her quickly helped her up, and carried her into the Yun residence to find a doctor to treat her. Seeing them leave, Ning Shu covered her mouth with a handkerchief and laughed. This child looked fierce, but she didn't expect that she couldn't be teased. She wasn't too annoying. But soon she couldn't laugh anymore, because a carriage slowly came from the shadow of the corner, and stopped in front of her. Hui Mo, who was driving the carriage, looked at her quietly with a complicated expression. Chapter 37. She had just made up a rumor about him, and was caught in the blink of an eye. What kind of luck was this? No wonder people said that if you walked too much at night, you would always bump into ghosts. Hui Mo looked at her with a complicated expression and said with difficulty, It turns out that you have already. Ning Shu was stunned for a moment before she reacted. Others did not know that she was just casually making up a story to teach Qi Zhaoyu a lesson. They only felt that she had analyzed her true feelings and wholeheartedly. She had long been deeply in love with Xia Hoqing. She subconsciously looked behind the curtain and asked, Your Highness? Hui Mo nodded at her sympathetically, which made her hope completely shattered. Lady Ning, you don't have to feel embarrassed. There are too many women who admire my master. In the past, in Yunnan province, there was a line at the gate of the prince's mansion every day. In the capital, it is almost the same. You don't have to feel inferior, although Hui Mo was very kind and wanted to comfort her, but this kind of kindness simply gave Ning Shu a headache. She silently looked inside the carriage. It was so quiet that she could almost hear Xia Hoqing's breathing inside. It was shallow and even, but it was impossible to ignore. In the past, she'd taken liberties with King Chujiang countless times in the netherworld, but taking liberties in front of him was different from confessing her feelings behind his back. This feeling of secretly admiring him, but not daring to confess it in front of his face, and only daring to confess it behind his back was especially shameful. The most shameful thing was that it was heard by the person involved. No matter how thick-skinned Ning Shu was, at this moment, she couldn't help but blush. Fortunately, Xia Hoqing couldn't see her embarrassment at this time. She rubbed the tip of her nose and walked to the front of the carriage shamelessly. She bowed and said, "My daughter spoke recklessly just now and offended Your Highness. Your Highness, please don't take offense. My daughter is serious." Before she finished her words, a white hand reached out from the carriage and interrupted her. His voice was still so indifferent that she couldn't hear his emotions. "Take it." He slowly opened his palm, revealing a small sachet with a blossoming peach blossom embroidered on it. It was the sachet that Ning Shu had dropped when she was riding his carriage to Chasing Clouds and Chasing Moon Pavilion. Xia Hoqing paused for a moment when he felt 3 soft fingers taking the sachet away from his palm. He took back his hand and said to Huiyamo, "Let's go." Huiyamo showed her a pitiful expression and waved his whip to drive the carriage away. Behind him, Ning Shu looked at the sachet in her palm, her mind a complete mess. In the end, she let out a long sigh. Forget it, forget it. In any case, he already knew of the Heavenly Fox Star's reputation as a loose woman. Let him think whatever he wants. Being thick-skinned was sometimes a good advantage. Without Qi Zhuanyu's obstruction, Ning Shu finally stepped into the Yin residence smoothly. She saw Madame Yun and Cloud Leaf lying on the sickbed. Yin Foreign personally stood guard by Yun Fei's side. It could be seen that she had stayed up for more than one night as her eyes were already red. When the servants asked her to rest, she refused. She took a hot handkerchief and carefully wiped Yun Fei's face and hands, hoping to wipe a layer of blood from his face that was as white as paper. However, she found that no matter how hot the water was, it was useless. Very quickly, that layer of blood was blown away by the night wind, becoming even whiter. Madame Yun, who had been tough for decades, trembled with her fingers. Finally, she couldn't help but cover her face and squeeze out a suppressed cry from her throat. Ning Shu remembered that in her previous life, her family was sentenced to be beheaded. Originally, after her father was beheaded, it was her and Ji Er's turn to be beheaded. Her mother shouted loudly, wanting to be beheaded before her children. After giving birth to her and Ji Er, her mother, who had been weak and sick and looked like she would fall if the wind blew, smiled at her with blood on the corner of her mouth and said, "Shu, don't be afraid. Your father and I will go first. We will pave the way for you in the underworld, and then come to welcome you." By the time Xiao Yuni rushed over with the imperial edict, her mother's head had already been separated from her body. Thousands of love and thousands of sufferings, but no one loved a child more than a mother. Chapter 38. Being sentimental at this moment would not help Cloud Leaf. Instead, it would make things worse. Ning Shu blinked away the jealousy in her eyes, and walked to the woodshed where Cloud Leaf's personal servant was locked up. The Yun family was a special family in the capital. Imperial Censor Yun's reputation for being incorruptible was well known in the capital for being henpecked. Ever since he got married over 20 years ago, Imperial Censor Yun had never dared to look at other women. Not to mention concubines. Even a hen would need Madame Yun's permission to enter the Yun residence. Therefore, the Yun family had never had any filthy affairs of internal strife. Cloud Leaf himself had always stood aloof from worldly affairs, and had never offended anyone. It was said that there must be a cause for everything. However, the biggest problem with this case was that they could not find a single suspect after all the investigations. In the end, only the female ghost could be explained. It was truly laughable. Forsythia followed behind Ning Shu. As she walked, she asked, "Miss, this case is too uncertain. There isn't even a suspect. How can we continue investigating?" Ning Shu shook her head. "I don't believe that there is a watertight wooden barrel in this world. Even if it is made of iron, water will slowly seep out from the gaps. There must be a flaw in this case in an inconspicuous corner." Lian Xiao frowned. But the Supreme Court and Jingji province have questioned everyone. Even Imperial Censor Yin himself had brought people to search the entire residence of Yun. Anyone who had come into contact with young Master Yin in the past month, even the old man in the breakfast shop, was not spared. None of them could find any problems. Ning Shu was calm. "It's simple. Someone is not telling the truth. Forsythia was shocked. This matter has already been reported to the heavens. If they are still not telling the truth, do they not want their lives anymore? Perhaps it's because there are some things that are more important than one's life. The woodshed's iron lock was opened and a choking smell wafted out. Ningshu was not the least bit squeamish as she walked in. In the corner of the woodshed, 2 people were tied up. They were Cloudleaf's personal servants, Peasant and Debate Day. These 2 had always accompanied Cloudleaf since she was young. No matter what Cloudleaf ate or where she went, these 2 would always accompany her. However, under the watchful eyes of these 2 people, the Cloudleaf still got into trouble. The 2 of them could not absolve themselves from the blame. In a fit of anger, Madame Yin imprisoned the 2 of them. She threatened that if anything happened to Cloudleaf, she would allow them to die with her. In just a few short days, the 2 of them had been working so hard that they had dark circles under their eyes and their faces were pale. They felt as if the gates of hell had already been opened to them, and welcomed them with open arms. Forsythia brought a chair for Ningshu to sit in front of them. Lowering her head to look at the 2 people who were paralyzed on the ground, Ningshu's expression was very amiable. In the afternoon, I asked the 2 of you to recall if your young master had any disputes, conflicts, or physical altercations with anyone. Can you recall anything now? The 2 of them raised their heads and raised their heads. The 2 of them raised their heads, their eyes filled with despair as they said in a daze, "Our young master's temper is the best. He is happy all day long, he likes to recite poems, he doesn't touch mahjong dice, he doesn't enter brothels or gambling dens. At most he would attend a poetry gathering every 10 days. In the entire capital, who doesn't praise our young master for being clean and honest? His natural disposition is pure and kind. Even if we cracked our skulls, we couldn't think of anyone who would harm him." As the 2 of them spoke, a few lines of tears fell down. Ningshu continued to guide them patiently. "Perhaps he encountered something strange or met some strange person that made you feel slightly surprised and left some impression?" The 2 of them thought for a long time before shaking their heads again. Ningshu asked a few similar questions to guide them, but there were no results. Looking at the 2 people who were huddled in the corner like lifeless pieces of wood, waiting for death, Ningshu sighed in her heart and suddenly asked, "What did he use to threaten you?" The 2 people's ashen faces suddenly twitched. Chapter 39. The 2 of them were startled by Ningshu's words and subconsciously wanted to deny it, but they were interrupted by her outstretched hand. "Your lives?" In the dark woodshed, there was only the begonia lamp in Forsythia's hand. The warm orange light shone on Ningshu's body. She was as beautiful as a fairy, but her eyes were like 2 balls of black mercury immersed in water. She could easily see through their hearts. "No, Madame Yin has already ordered you to die. Since you're not afraid, it shouldn't be this." "Then what is it?" As she spoke, she scrutinized their expressions and slowly shook her head. "Oh, it's the lives of your entire family." When her voice fell, the 2 people who were like wooden puppets waiting for death revealed extremely panicked expressions. It proved that she had guessed correctly. With a plan in mind, Ningshu continued, "Let me continue to guess. The first wave of people to interrogate you was from the Jingji government, so it was Lord Wei who warned you. If you dare to open your mouth, your entire family will die." From the 2 people's terrified and suffocated expressions, she knew that she had guessed correctly again. Ningshu looked at them with pity. "You only know that you want to save your family's lives, but you don't know that sometimes, compared to death, living is more painful. Although I'm just a harem's daughter, I've heard of some punishments that are worse than death. I'll use one of them, burning, as an example. In your impression, burning is nothing more than roasting a person to death. Although it hurts a little, as long as you don't implicate your family, you'll die. It's a clean death. The new and improved version is many times more cruel. While roasting you on a fire, your family will watch from the side and smell the aroma of your roasted meat. Then, they will use a knife used to cut mutton, which must be extremely sharp, to cut off your roasted meat piece by piece and feed it to your family. As they eat, they will also have to listen to your screams. When they're full, we'll send them home safely." Her voice was neither arrogant nor impatient, neither fast nor slow. It was as pleasant as jade. but it made the two people drenched in sweat. They were more terrified than if their entire family had died. This kind of punishment, Imperial Censor Yin knows many times more details than I do. I asked you again today, because I wanted to give you a chance, but it seems that I can't help you. Ning Shu sighed regretfully and got up, unwilling to waste any more time on them. Forsythia, let's go. The warm orange light was withdrawn from the woodshed. An invisible knife for shaving mutton was set up behind the darkness, forcibly prying open the two tightly shut clamshells. Lady Ning, we've already told you. We said it. The two of them, who had been silent all this time, finally couldn't help but reveal everything. Half a month ago, young master lost 4 hours. The embroidered shoes, which were about to step over the threshold, finally stopped. Ning Shu turned her head, and her eyes flashed. Lost. Actually, it's not that bad. Ning Shu asked. Where did it happen? On a pleasure boat in the moon-seizing lake. Moon-embracing lake pleasure boat. These two words spun around in her heart, and Ning Shu faintly had an impression. She slowly said, Is it because of the new Lady Chiu who came to the moon-seizing lake a few months ago? Since they had already decided to speak, there was no need to hide it anymore. The two of them smacked their dry lips, looked at each other, and decided to talk about it later. 3 months ago, a new Lady Chiu came to the pleasure boat in the moon-seizing lake in the west of the city. Her name was Nainu. It was rumored that her voice was like pearls and jade, ethereal and pleasant to the ear. Anyone who heard it would be intoxicated, only feeling that the Sanskrit of the immortal realm was nothing more than this. Moreover, that Lady Chiu had integrity. She only sold her skills and not her body. Other than that, she also had a peculiar point, which was that she always covered her face with a light veil. She once said that unless the heavenly power descended, she would only invite the other party to take off her veil. Otherwise, even if they had 10,000 taels of gold, they wouldn't be able to take half a step into her pleasure boat. Therefore, the scholars in the capital all supported her. Young Master's Poetry Club was even more so. Everyone wanted to board her pleasure boat, to prove that their literary talent was better than others. Although Ning Shu had never seen it, she had heard of it. It was said that Lady Chiu was in the limelight for a period of time. Even the #1 star of the capital, Little Hong Yan, was suppressed by her, causing a lot of unhappiness. On the side, Forsythia unhappily frowned when she heard this. So your family's young master went to see that Lady Chiu? Note 1. Lady Chiu, another name for female singers in the ancient times. In Bai Juyi's Pipa song, it was written that Lady Chiu was jealous of Lady Chiu. Chapter 40. Chu He hurriedly said, Lady Ning, please don't misunderstand. My family's young master is sincere towards you and has no interest in that Chiu Nyang. Beside him, Bien Ri nodded vigorously and continued, The cause of the matter is this. Our young master's good friend in the Poetry Society, the Jiang family's 4th young master, had a conflict with the Sun family's 2nd young master for some unknown reason. The two argued and almost used violence, so they made a bet. Whoever can win the favor of Nainu and see her true appearance first, the other person will be willing to be humiliated by Han Xin. However, the Jiang family's 4th young master failed several times, and then came to beg my family's young master. At that time, my family's young master was busy preparing for his wedding with you. He was busy every day and didn't want to meddle in this matter. However, many years ago, my family's lord was almost convicted because of his words. Fortunately, Lord Jiang spoke up and helped my family to escape this calamity. Because of his previous kindness and friendship, my family's young master couldn't resist the Jiang family's 4th young master's pleas and agreed. That night, the moon-embracing lake was bustling with noise and excitement. Nearly 100 scholars gathered to compete. Nainu came up with 3 questions in a row, and my family's young master came out on top. Nainu announced on the spot that she wanted to invite my family's young master to meet her on the pleasure boat. Everyone was envious, but they couldn't help but admit defeat. Thus, my family's young master brought the Jiang family's 4th young master onto the pleasure boat. We waited by the lake, and then heard Miss Nina's moving singing voice. She was as graceful as a fairy and was indeed extraordinary. The two of them vaguely recalled the beautiful scene, and felt that it would be great if they could stay at that moment. Gossip was a refreshing medicine. Ningshu listened with great interest, and then we waited by the shore for a long time, but our young master didn't come ashore. However, our young master clearly said that he would return shortly before boarding the boat. Thus, we asked the pleasure boat for him. The servant on the pleasure boat said that our young master had already come ashore on the other side of the lake. When we heard this, we became anxious and hurriedly searched. However, we couldn't find any trace of our young master. Even the Jiang family's fourth young master was nowhere to be seen. We searched for nearly 4 hours, and almost went crazy. We almost went to report it to the authorities. In the end, we found our young master under a peach blossom tree on a small hill not far away. At that time, I found it strange. I had clearly searched around the peach blossom tree a few times, but I couldn't find it. Why did I only find it after searching so many times? Later on, when I thought about it, perhaps young master ran around after getting drunk and got lost with me. Ningshu asked, after your young master was found, did he say anything? Peasant shook his head and said, young master was drunk and couldn't recognize anyone. He looked at me and said nonsense about himself. I thought it was fortunate that I was able to find young master, so I carried young master back to the residence. Forsythia interrupted. If that's the case, why is Lord Wei threatening the two of you? Finally, he reached the most terrifying part of the story. Peasant held his dizzy head and mumbled, because when young master woke up, he found that he had an additional jade pendant. Ningshu asked, what kind of jade pendant? Carved on the back is a jade token with an azure sparrow. Forsythia didn't know what was so special about the cyan sparrow. How could a jade pendant scare these people like that? But Ningshu knew it like the back of her hand. Because this azure sparrow was the emblem of the Empress Chao's maternal family, Uncle Chao's family. Peasant's tears rolled down his cheeks. We don't know what happened. After young master regained consciousness, he couldn't remember clearly. Besides a tear in his clothes, there was nothing else, so we didn't take it to heart. The jade pendant was originally on young master's table, but it disappeared without a trace. We really didn't think much of it at that time. Who knew that young master would become like that? They also didn't understand. It was such a small matter at that time, so how did it escalate to such a state? They were still in a daze after being threatened by the official yesterday. But what could they do? Sometimes everything was just fate. Ningshu finally understood. No wonder yesterday at the entrance of the Duke Public House, Shen Ziqing didn't even care about the reputation he had accumulated over 20 years of handling cases. He just wanted to convict her based on a few flawed pieces of evidence. Whether it was to offend the high and mighty empress or to offend the little Ningshu, the latter was definitely more worth it. Chapter 41. Before leaving the woodshed, Ningshu calmly said, I know you're innocent, but your young master who's lying on the sickbed is equally innocent. Stay here obediently and don't think about anything else. I'll guarantee that your entire family won't die. She locked up the woodshed once more. The people inside froze as they looked in the direction Ningshu had left. After a long time, they finally dared to cry for the first time in a few days, wailing miserably. The immortals in the heavens only needed to move their feet to casually drop a speck of dust. To the ants on the ground, it was like a mountain. However, even ants had the luxury of wanting to live. After Ningshu's explanation, they finally saw the huge iceberg hidden in the corner of the jade tablet. Forsythia only regained her senses after a long time, feeling a chill run down her spine. First, it was the invisible poison that killed people. Then, it was the sudden appearance of a female ghost and a blood letter. Now it was related to the Empress's maiden family. Heavens, this case was simply too terrifying. Fortunately, Forsythia wasn't a coward as she followed Ningshu around. After a while she asked, Young miss, should we investigate the imperial uncle's estate or the blood letter that suddenly appeared? Ningshu had her own thoughts. There's no rush to investigate the blood letter. Although it seems suspicious, my master's books have recorded several methods of creating something out of nothing. However, we can only determine which method it is the next time the blood letter appears. She didn't have the time to sit around in the Yun residence and wait. If the female ghost didn't appear, wouldn't she have to wait for 15 days? She had already arranged for Zigui to guard the Yun residence in advance. She didn't believe that ghosts existed in the mortal realm, unless the black and white impermanents were idle. Taking a step back, even if there really were ghosts, they would have to first fight with her, an old ghost of 7 lifetimes. As for the imperial uncle's estate, it's a little arbitrary to associate it with the Chow family based on a jade tablet that only 2 servants spoke of. So let's put these 2 matters aside for now. Ningxu blinked. Right now let's go take a look at Beauty's voice. Since this case started with Nainu, they had to trace it back to the root, and find out what exactly happened during the 4 hours she disappeared. Moreover, I've heard that the refreshments on the pleasure boat at the moon-embracing lake are pretty good, and I can go and have a taste. Just as she was talking about a beauty, she saw a handsome man in a moon-white robe standing under the pink begonia tree in the cloud-leaf courtyard, quietly looking into the house through the window. Ningxu could be considered to have seen the world. In terms of appearance, this person was definitely not comparable to Xiaohoqing, but this person's temperament was very gentle, which was rare in the entire capital. Moreover, his eyes were clear and warm. When he closed his eyes, there was a kind of pure feeling that made people have a good impression of him. It was Yin Ruohui, the eldest son of the Yun family, who was known as one of the twin masters alongside Cloud Leaf. Previously, in the wedding hall, Ningxu had a very brief encounter with him. At that time, the situation was tense and she did not see clearly. Now that she looked at him closely, she realized that he really was Jade Tree Orchid. Noticing Ningxu's arrival, Yin Ruohui nodded towards her. Then he continued to look at the silent Cloud Leaf on the sickbed and softly said, "Since he was young, he has always been a timid child. When he was 8 years old, he would cry and hide behind me when he saw insects. I never thought that when he grew up, he would make me have a whole new level of respect for him." Under the slightly cold moonlight, Yin Ruohui's voice was faintly sentimental. 2 months ago, he met you in the Plum Mountain for the first time. When he came back, it was as if he was possessed and said that he must marry you. Aunt flew into a rage and said that you have the fate of bringing misfortune to your husband. Does he not want to live anymore if he dares to marry you? He has always been gentle and filial, never daring to disobey his elders. I thought that at most he would cause a ruckus for 3 to 5 days. In the end, he would not be able to withstand the pressure from his elders and the threat of secular rumors. He would give up on this idea, just like the majority of people in this world. I never thought that I would underestimate him. He went on a hunger strike several times, each time more determined than the last. Uncle and aunt were at their wits' end, and could only order me to persuade him. I asked him, "Do you really want to risk universal condemnation for a woman?" But he stubbornly replied, "In this life, it is already a great blessing to meet someone who you truly love. If you give up so easily just because of a false reputation, then you have lived this life in vain." After he finished speaking, he looked at Ningxu and immediately explained, "Don't misunderstand. I don't mean to blame you. I am just ashamed. In this matter, I am far inferior to him." Ningxu's feathered eyelashes were deeply shaken by Yin Ruohui's words. She never knew that Cloud Leaf had carried this burden for her. She couldn't help but reflect on herself. In order to avoid the curse of 17 years old and protect her family, she had implicated someone unrelated to her. She was too selfish. Beside her, Yin Ruohui was also immersed in heavy memories. He said absent-mindedly, "If back then I also..." The moment these words came out of his mouth, he instantly woke up as if from a dream. He smiled bitterly, and his gaze fell on Cloud Leaf's snow-white face again. He said softly, "He will get better, right?" Ningxu nodded solemnly and answered with one word, "Yes." Chapter 42. The moon-embracing lake had just entered the most bustling time of the day. On the rippling lake, hundreds of pleasure boats, big and small, were dotted with stars. The pleasant sound of music and the fragrance of the beauties made people who passed by 3 li away intoxicated. Ningxu changed into men's clothing and opened the flying curtain. She entered the pleasure boat and followed the directions of the girls. She went to the 2nd floor and found the procuress in charge of the pleasure boat. The procuress, who was dressed in red and green, cast a sidelong glance at her. "Who are you looking for?" Ning Shu smiled and cupped her hands. "Excuse me, is Miss Nina here?" "Don't ask, she's dead." When the procuress heard this, she turned and left. When Ning Shu saw that this procuress was really a big shot, she quickly took out a silver ingot from her purse and stuffed it over with a smile. "Mother, you don't know. I came from Jinzhou to admire Miss Nian Nu's fragrant name. Mother, please be sure to tell me where Miss is now. Money makes the devil turn millstones." This was an unchanging truth. The procuress's attitude immediately changed when she saw the silver ingot in her hand. Although she was still not happy, she was finally willing to speak. "I don't know if she's dead or not, but in my heart, she's no different than dead. Half a month ago, that damned girl asked me for leave. She said she was going out to meet a very important person, and would be back in 2 hours. According to the rules, how can a girl on the boat disembark at will? But she begged me that she came to the capital to find this person. If she didn't see him, she might as well be dead. I thought she was really pitiful, and she gave me her family's heirloom as collateral. My heart softened and I allowed her to go. I didn't expect that as soon as she got off the boat, she abandoned the maid I sent to keep an eye on her. She hasn't returned yet. Tell me, if she didn't run away, what else could it be?" The procuress was full of anger when she thought about it. "How much money did I spend to create such a big scene for her? I haven't even gotten my money back yet, but she ran away with a wild man. Don't let me catch her, otherwise I will skin her alive. Half a month ago, it was the night of the cloud leaf's accident. Such a coincidence?" Ning Shu continued to ask. "You didn't look for it?" The procuress rolled her eyes. "That wretched girl came from Qingzhou, which is more than 1,000 miles away from the capital. Moreover, she went to meet that wild man. I don't know which corner she is hiding in. Where can I find her? I wish I had that ability." After pondering for a while, Ning Shu smiled apologetically and said, "I won't hide it from Mama. Actually, I am a servant of the Jiangfu. Half a month ago, my family's 4th young master and Yun family's young master visited Miss Ninu's place. Unexpectedly, when they returned, their entire bodies were sore, as if they had been beaten by someone. But my young master was so drunk that he couldn't remember anything. He has been brooding over it for the past half a month, so he sent us here to ask who was the one who humiliated him that night." "Oh, so that's what you want to ask. That night's incident didn't affect him at all. Your young master had already disembarked from the ship. It has nothing to do with me." Ning Shu sighed and anxiously said, "What incident? Can Mama casually tell us about it? Otherwise, we won't be able to find out anything. We really won't be able to report back to young master." Another ingot of silver was stuffed into the procuress's palm. The procuress saw that her attitude was sincere, and that she was thin and weak, like a delicate and pitiful little girl. So she kindly said, all right. Who told Mama to be so kind-hearted that I can't bear to see people suffer? I'll tell you about it. That night, nearly 100 scholars gathered in front of my pleasure boat to compete in poetry. The final winner was Ninu's guest that night. That situation was truly lively. In my opinion, several of the young master's poems that night were very good. Among them, there was no lack of people who spent lavishly. But for some reason, Ninu chose the Yun family's young master as the winner. That girl has always been willful. I had no way to discipline her, so I could only let her be. Your young master followed the Yun family's young master onto the boat, but Ninu's rule only allowed one person to meet. Thus, after listening to the song, your young master disembarked first. The Yun family's young master was also a strange person. When young master Jiang disembarked, he also wanted to disembark. He didn't want to meet Ninu. Just as the Yun family's young master was about to leave, a rich young master dressed in gold and silver suddenly rushed over with 7 or 8 thugs. He insisted on meeting Ninu and wanted to take her away. That attitude was truly frightening. I've seen many rich playboys in the brothel, but I've never seen such a bold and unreasonable one. Seeing that Ninu was about to be taken away, the Yin family's young master blocked their way. I thought to myself, it's over. What use could such a weak scholar be? I didn't expect that the Yin family's young master to have such a strong aura, even though he looked weak. His words made the rich young master speechless, causing him to lose face. The rich young master left the boat in shame and anger. Before he left, he said that he would let the Yun family's young master know how to write the word death. The procuress was beaming with joy as she spoke. In the end, she suddenly remembered the rumor that the Yun family's young master was not well recently. Her heart skipped a beat and she hurriedly said, "Could the matter of the Yun family's young master be related to that rich young master? Oh my God. If you want to find him, go find Nainu. This has nothing to do with this old woman." The procuress hurriedly turned to run. Ningshu hurriedly went forward and smiled apologetically. "Mother, don't be afraid. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. It definitely won't be blamed on you. I only have one last question. Mother, do you remember what the rich young master looked like, or what characteristics he had?" A bulging pouch was presented in front of her. The procuress was extremely conflicted. In the end, she clenched her teeth and hugged the pouch tightly. Then, she whispered in Ningshu's ear, "I don't remember what he looked like. I only remember that he had a small red mole on the tip of his nose." Chapter 43. The capital is full of debauches, but to be so arrogant and have a small red mole on the tip of his nose, he is the only one. Does your highness know who he is? It was still the same second-floor private room in the Chasing Cloud and Chasing Moon restaurant, but for the first time, Ningshu felt that the food was tasteless. Opposite him, Xiahou Qing was still as calm as before, as if he would not be shaken by anything. He took a sip of tea, and from his beautiful but bloodless lips, he casually spat out a name. The youngest son of the Ruan family, Ruan Chang'an. Hearing these words, Ningshu could not help but sigh for the first time in a few days. The two words Chang and were not scary. What was scary was the first word Ruan. Bai Xiaosheng, who was downstairs, was still as witty as before. He had a glib tongue, and the sound of a bamboo clapper was heard. If you ask about the most honorable woman in the imperial court, it must be the mother of the world, the graceful and peerless empress. But if you ask about the most favored woman in front of the sage, it must be Consort Nguyen. Consort Nguyen entered the palace for less than 3 years, and was promoted from a small noble to an imperial concubine, only one step away from the position of empress. She is our great Yu dynasty's most outstanding woman. Does anyone know who had such a glorious record? Bai Xiaosheng had just whetted everyone's appetite, and then immediately said, "I can't say." Countless boos came from the audience. Bai Xiaosheng shook his head and said, "It's not that I'm deliberately keeping everyone in suspense, but once I say it, I'm afraid my head will fly away in an instant. Let us continue to talk about Consort Nguyen. You may not know, but when Consort Nguyen entered the palace 3 years ago, she was not favored. There were 3,000 beauties in the harem. Some were beautiful, some were talented, and some were lock-breakers. In short, she was a dazzling beauty. Consort Nguyen's family was not too prominent, and in the first year she entered the palace, she did not even see the sage's face. In the following 2 years, although there was some improvement, it was still ordinary, until last year on the 8th day of the 12th lunar month, the Bathing Buddha festival. In fact, many people knew about this part, but it didn't stop them from continuing to listen with great interest. Let's talk about that day. Today, His Majesty led the harem to Wanfo Temple to watch the Bathing Buddha ceremony. Just as the ceremony was about to end, a strange light suddenly descended from the sky and landed on Lady Ruan at that time. Jin Sheng was shocked. He thought it was a demon, but when he took a closer look, it was actually a 7-colored Buddhist light. Ruan Siren's body was glowing with Buddhist light, making him look like an immortal or a god. Then he heard Sanskrit chanting coming from the horizon. The tens of thousands of people present exclaimed in admiration and knelt down in worship. A man below the stage stood up excitedly. "I know. I was there at that time. And I have to say that it was a miracle." Under the Buddhist light, the imperial concubine looked dignified and holy. Her beauty was enough to cause the downfall of a city. Anyone who saw her would feel as if they had met a celestial being. His companion next to him laughed. "Don't brag. You were right next to me at that time. There was a huge crowd in front of you. It's already impressive that you could see one nose and two eyes of the imperial concubine clearly. What celestial being, haha. I saw it. That Buddha's light was truly dazzling. How could it be fake? The man's face was red and he hurriedly argued. Everyone made fun of him. Bai Shaoxing took a sip of tea to moisten his throat and continued. Master Jianneng announced on the spot that Ruan Kairan was a mortal woman born from Guanyin. She would enter the palace to assist Jin Sheng and protect our great Yu for hundreds of generations. Jin Sheng was very happy and made her an imperial concubine on the spot. Not long after returning to the palace, there was news that Ruan Kairan was pregnant. Jin Sheng was overjoyed and made an exception to make her an imperial concubine. Carefully calculating, from a 5th-ranked talent to a 1st-ranked imperial concubine, it took less than 100 days. She was really lucky. It is said that next month, Jin Sheng will welcome the Golden Buddha to the capital. At that time he will bring along Consort and Wen to attend. At that time, I'm afraid that hundreds of thousands of people in the capital will be there to watch. They will be able to see the imperial concubine's elegance and receive the protection of Buddha's light. On the 2nd floor, Ning Shu, who was listening with her chin in her hand, couldn't help but feel sour. TSK. Look at how biased the heavens are. For someone else, the Buddha's light descended to the world and made a meteoric rise. For her, the heavenly fox evil star, everyone would spit on her. It really made people unhappy. Very unhappy. Forget it, it was better to return to her business. After being jealous of other people's good luck, Ning Shu took out a small piece of paper from her bosom and pushed it in front of Xiahou Qing. I spent 80 taels of silver to ask the artist to roughly draw a small portrait according to the description of the brothel madam and several servant girls. Then, I took this small portrait and waited for an entire day at the gambling house that Ruan Chang'an frequented. Finally, I found him. He is 80% similar to the portrait. That night at the moon-embracing lake, the one who had a conflict with Cloud Leaf should be him, Ruan Chang'an. Chapter 44. Even though Ning Shu was prepared that this case wouldn't be simple, she didn't expect that the Empress and the imperial consort would be implicated. One of the noblest women in the court, one of the most favored women in front of the emperor. Any one of them could crush her, little Ning Shu, like an ant. She didn't know whether to say that Cloud Leaf's luck was too bad, or that her luck was too good. Tomorrow, she would go buy a set of masks. Xiahou Qing said faintly. Continue the investigation? Of course, Ning Shu answered decisively. But how do we do it? Ruan Chang'an was definitely involved, and the missing jade tablet was definitely related to the imperial uncle's estate. She wanted to lead soldiers to surround the Ruan and Chao clans, and then drag all the young masters into prison for interrogation. The problem was, even if she stacked up the heads of all the officials in the Jingji provincial court, she wouldn't be able to do that. If the Empress and the imperial consort found out, she wouldn't be able to get the first sentence out before she died. She couldn't go straight. If she wanted to continue the investigation, she would have to take an unconventional approach. She obviously wanted to kick the ball to him, but Xiahou Qing wasn't prepared to accept it. He gently twisted the palm bone and said, "Since you came to find me, it means that you already have a plan in mind, right?" "I don't have a plan, just a small rotten idea." Ning Shu was very modest. Xiahou Qing thought for a moment and guessed. "Is it tomorrow at Old Consort Yu's Begonia Festival? Or in 5 days at the 3rd Prince's eldest daughter's 100-day banquet?" Of course, the sooner the better. She couldn't help but praise him. Spring was a great season. All the rich and powerful families loved to hold banquets in this season. The 2 biggest banquets in recent times were held by these 2 families. Moreover, they were very influential. She had already asked around and found out that both the Chao family and the Ruan family would attend. The feeling of someone giving her a pillow when she was sleepy was too satisfying. "It's just," Ning Shu gave a long, distressed sigh. "I'm really worried that I'll die before I can solve your Highness's problem. That would be a great dereliction of my duty." The wind outside the window blew the end of the black ribbon in front of him. It danced across the side of his face, then fell to the side of his pale neck. Xiahou Qing said carelessly, "You want me to save your life? Why was it so easy to talk to a smart person? Ning Shu clicked her tongue in admiration and smiled sweetly. Your Highness is indeed wise. My daughter is not as good as you. Hearing the soft words that were deliberately trying to curry favor by his ear, Xiaoqing let out a soft snort. Don't worry about that. If you can prove that you are useful, I will definitely not watch you die so easily. Estes right, Estet. Chooses. Teet, Titespi. T. After her unexpected melodramatic confession that night, she was worried that he would misunderstand and whether she needed to explain. Now it seemed that she was overthinking. Ning Shu silently cursed, but she didn't dare to show it on her face. She smiled and said, Hearing your Highness's words, I'm relieved. By the way, why isn't Huema here? Today, there was another bodyguard by his side. His name was Jiuxi. He was about the same age as Huema, but his personality was very different. He was calm and taciturn, just like another Xiaoqing. Compared to him, Huema was more interesting. That day, he promised that Huema would appear in front of her in 3 days. Now 2 days had passed. Was he going to break his promise? The dignified Prince Pingnan shouldn't have such a bad character, right? How could he not understand the hint in her words? Xiaoqing frowned unhappily and said coldly, Don't worry. Before you need him, he will appear in front of you. If there's nothing else, let's call it a day. It was me who gauged the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a petty person. Please forgive me, Your Highness. Being able to bend, stand tall, and flatter were Ning Shu's 3 principles in living in the human world. She was very familiar with them. She hurriedly sent an extremely brilliant smile. Suddenly thinking of something, she took out a piece of paper from her bosom. By the way, Your Highness, I have one more thing. I spent a total of 120 taels of silver on the investigation in the past few days. It's all on this bill. If Your Highness is responsible for all of it, it will be biased and I'll feel bad. How about this? You and I will each pay half of the investigation expenses. In the future, all the investigation expenses will be the same. What do you think? Of course, if Your Highness insists on paying more, I can only reluctantly not embarrass Your Highness. Her words were full of righteousness. It was as if she wanted to flaunt the sentence, I'm a good person if I don't take advantage of you, on her forehead. There was a short silence. There was a slight breeze, and the fragrance of tea was melted. Jiuxi looked at the usually calm Prince Pingnan in surprise. She was so angry that she smiled. Then her sleeve shook, and the bill in Ning Shu's hand was invisibly swollen. She threw the bill into the fire that was boiling tea next to her and burned it. His Highness stood up and said coldly, Where is the bill you mentioned? Ning Shu was tongue-tied. Chapter 45. It turned out that although His Royal Highness denied the debt, his character was not bad. The next day, Ning Shu saw a person standing in front of her respectfully as soon as she went out of the house. Baiji, who was serving in her courtyard, lowered her head and walked over. She bowed to her and said, Greetings, eldest Mississippi. Ning Shu looked at Baiji and suddenly frowned. She took a few steps back and looked at her from afar. She asked, Who are you? Baiji was a little surprised. I'm here to serve Mississippi. Ning Shu curled her lips and looked at her. Her usual gentle smile was a little cold at this time. Your appearance is almost the same, and your behavior is also very similar. But there is one thing. The rules in my courtyard are different from other places. You don't have to salute me. If you don't tell me the truth, I have to call the soldiers. Forsythia. Forsythia was ready to shout, but Baiji hurriedly came forward and confessed, My good Forsythia, don't. Lady Ning, I'll tell you. I'm Huiyamo. It was a woman's voice at first, but when she said her name, it was a man's voice. Ah? Forsythia couldn't help but laugh out loud. Huimo's face was very red. He was so ashamed and angry. Even Ning Shu couldn't help but stare, the corners of her lips curling into a smile. No wonder Xiaoqing said 3 days. She had to dress a handsome man as a pretty maid and shrink her body from nearly 8 feet to 6 feet and 5 inches. She also had to learn to wear red and green, put on makeup, walk 3 steps and so on. Even 30 days was short. Previously, She had been wondering what method Xiaoqing would use to send Hui Mo to her side to help. So this was the case. His Royal Highness was really smart. My daughter is completely convinced. Don't laugh again. If you laugh again, I'll leave. Hui Mo was very embarrassed. He didn't expect that the secret skill of his sect would be used in such a place. It was really embarrassing. Fortunately, Shi Yan and the others couldn't see, otherwise, they wouldn't be able to live anymore. Ning Shu had enough of laughing in her heart. She immediately cleared her throat and put on a serious face. She put on a begging attitude and said, Brother Huema, I will definitely remember your hard work. Now, I have something that I need your help with. If one were to ask who loved to host banquets the most in the capital, it would definitely be old Princess Consort Yu. Ever since the old prince had died of illness, the eldest and second sons of the prince had been killed in a bandit suppression mission, and the Junju and the Fu had been married off, old Princess Yu had been left alone. Thus, she developed the hobby of holding banquets when she had nothing to do. Last autumn, old Princess Consort Yu had caught a cold and hadn't had a party for half a year. Now that she had recovered, she immediately held this grand begonia party. Old Princess Consort Yu had a lot of face. Today, all the people who came to attend were the most famous families in the capital. There were a few princes and princesses, and even the empress had been invited to relax. The entire Prince Yu's residence was filled with flowers and brocades. It was very lively. When Ning Shu arrived, the Prince Yu's residence was already very lively. A woman wearing a beautiful silk dress sat in the corridor and played the zither. Her fingertips played the zither, and the sound of the music was like pearls and jade splashing. Coupled with the blooming begonia in the corridor, it was indescribably beautiful and lively. There were more than 10 young ladies sitting in the corridor, listening to the music and gossiping. Rumor has it that the two most amazing divine skills on the moon-seizing lake are Chun Yang's song and Nainu's song. Now that I'm lucky enough to hear Chun Yang's song, I wonder when I'll be able to hear Nainu's celestial voice? The young lady of the Minister of Rights family next to her said. Then I'm afraid you won't be able to. I heard that Nainu has already run away with her lover. That's really a pity. Qi Huijin was also present. She sensed Ning Shu's arrival and cast a sidelong glance at her with a sneer. In this world, there are so many sluts with shallow eyelids. When they see a man, they throw themselves at him and fall in love with him. It's really disgusting. Chapter 46. Ning Shu indifferently walked to her side, bent down and whispered in her ear with a smile. It seems that Miss Ningyu has not seen a ghost for a few days. You. Qi Huijin glared and was about to scold, but suddenly remembered the damn slap that night and inexplicably had some lingering fear. Today there was an important matter, so Ning Shu did not have time to stop and tease her. She took Forsythia and Hui Mo to the northwest corner of the prince's mansion, where the young masters preferred archery, equestrian and polo fields. When they walked halfway, Hui Mo suddenly gave her a look. Ning Shu smiled. The three figures quickly turned into the flower garden and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The figure that had been quietly following behind her immediately panicked and looked for her. Just like a headless fly, she saw the figure that just disappeared suddenly appear in front of her. Ning Shu looked at her with a smile. Are you looking for me? It was Qinji Chunyang who was playing the zither in the corridor. Chunyang was startled and hurriedly curtsied. I just saw Miss at the banquet and felt that you were very similar to the young master who came to find Nina the day before yesterday. But I was not sure, so I followed you for a long time. Please forgive me. Ning Shu said. You are not mistaken, it is indeed me. Do you have anything related to that night to tell me? Chunyang slowly shook her head. I was not there that night, so I can't help Mississippi. But there is one thing that I am very sure of. Nina did not run away with a man. Ning Shu asked. Why do you say so? Chunyang said. At that time, mother was beside me, so I did not dare to say some words. In fact, Nainu personally told me that she came to the capital to find a good sister who grew up with her, not a lover. Her hometown, Qingzhou, is more than 1,000 miles away from the capital. She had to travel through mountains and rivers to get there. You can imagine how difficult it was. So when the procuress said that she ran away with a wild man half a month ago, I did not believe it. She must have had an accident. And that night, she greatly offended that rich young master. I am really worried, Ning Shu said. You want me to help you find Ninu's whereabouts? Chun Young nodded her head and bent her knees deeply. That's right. People like us are like duckweed, and our lives are worthless than paper. Even if we die in some muddy pit, no one will stop to look at us. Therefore I beg, miss, if it's convenient for you, can you go to the yamen and ask around? Perhaps you can save her life. This servant kowtows and thanks, miss. Ning Shu helped her up. Well, I'll help you ask the government. If I get the news, I'll send someone to tell you. Chun Yang was overjoyed and bowed deeply again. I can't thank you enough. After Chun Yang left, Huemo walked awkwardly like a woman and whispered. There was a conflict that night. Mr. Cloudleaf was poisoned and Ninu was missing. I think this matter must have something to do with the brother of the imperial concubine. Ning Shu lifted the corner of her skirt and continued to walk forward. Soon, she stood on a small slope with a wide field of vision. Simple, just ask Ruan Chang, and then you will know. Her eyes fell on a heroic figure wearing a purple jade pendant on the archery field. He was holding a bow and arrow and shot through the target, hitting the bullseye. The onlookers applauded and the scene was very lively. Although Ruan Chang was famous for being a playboy, she had to admit that he had some ability. For example, his archery skills in the written test were indeed superb, and ranked among the top in the capital. From the beginning until now, he had won 3 rounds in a row. Moreover, he was the youngest brother of the most favored consort when in the imperial court. Who dared not to give him some face? Everyone applauded. Amidst the dozens of praises, a soft and light voice suddenly pierced through the crowd. The voice was extremely pleasant to the ears, but the content of the words was extremely hateful. I've always heard that the 4th young master of the Ruan family has outstanding archery skills, and that he is able to shoot wild geese from the sky. That's why I specially came today to meet him. I didn't expect him to be so mediocre. It's more interesting to watch the ladies throw pots. Chapter 47. Ruan Chang and's bodyguard immediately scolded. Whose girl are you? How dare you be so presumptuous in front of my master? The crowd quickly dispersed, and they saw a slender and delicate figure, standing there quietly like a blooming begonia flower on a tree. Her faint smile was already very eye-catching, and the words she had just said were even more eye-catching. Someone next to her quickly recognized her. She is the celestial fox Jinx who brought misfortune to her husband after 3 marriages, Duke Ning's daughter, Ning Shu. Ruan Chang, who was in the middle of the crowd, heard the news and pushed aside the people around him. He looked at her up and down with contempt, and then sneered. So you are Ning Shu. A little girl dares to talk nonsense in front of me. Do you want to die? But Ning Shu said innocently. Is what I said wrong? It's just archery. Even my maidservant and I have better accuracy than you, young Master Ruan. Why don't we have a competition? Suddenly hearing that she took the initiative to propose a competition, the people around were stunned and burst into laughter. Did the miss of the Ning family lose 3 husbands in a row and become stupid? Ruan Chang was quite confident in archery, and there was no reason for him to not dare to accept the challenge. Well, since you dare to be so arrogant, I will let you see my power today. Ning Shu suddenly said, Wait. Ruan Chang said disdainfully. Are you afraid? Kowtow to me 3 times immediately, and I will spare you today. Ning Shu gently shook her head and smiled. Mr. Ruan, you may not know, but if you want to compete with me, Ning Shu, there must be a prize. The loser has to answer 3 questions from the winner, and no matter how difficult or embarrassing the questions are, he must answer truthfully, or his life will be reduced by 3 years. Only those who can afford to play and dare to play can participate. If you can't afford to play, you should forget about it. The weather was good today, and a light pink begonia petal broke off from the calyx and brushed her hair. The warm light fell on her smiling face, and people were stunned for a moment. But Ruan Chang quickly recovered and sneered. Who said I can't afford to play? You just have to pray that you don't cry too badly later. Ning Shu said neither hurriedly nor slowly. Then let's do the same as before. Each of us will send 3 people to compete in turns. On my side, it will be me and my 2 maidservants. Young Master Wan, please feel free to do as you please. Wan Chang'an sneered. That's good. I took out the 2 attendants beside me. If I lose to a woman, my name will be written backwards from now on. Ningxu looked at him with admiration. Young Master Wan is indeed heroic. My daughter admires you. Then the first round will be shooting willow. The commotion was so great that even the 13th princess and the others, who were playing in the teapot nearby, heard the commotion and came over to watch Ningxu. 50 steps away, the arrow pierced through the willow leaves. This was the first time Forsythia held a bow in her hands. Her whole body trembled. Fortunately, the young miss had already told her that it was okay to lose, so she mustered up the courage to shoot the first arrow. But that arrow was really ugly. It didn't even touch the willow tree's shadow before it fell to the ground. Everyone burst into laughter. The result was naturally Wan Chang'an's victory. The second round, shooting down the flying flowers. Compared with the motionless willow tree, it was more than twice as difficult to shoot down the falling flying flowers. Even the attendants that Wan Chang'an trusted missed. Others were waiting for Ningxu's second maidservant to lose face again. They didn't expect that the maidservant, who looked inconspicuous, was so calm as if she was a martial artist. In the end, her arrow pierced through the willow tree. The crowd was silent. Hui Mo disdainfully curled up the corner of his mouth. Everyone in Lord Pingnan's mansion knows some small tricks. It's not worth making a fuss over. Wan Chang'an's face suddenly changed. He gritted his teeth and said, "Lucky. Your maidservants were in the first 2 rounds. It should be your turn in the last round." Ningxu smiled and said, "Okay." Wan Chang'an was very impatient. "What's the last round?" Ningxu seemed to be stumped by the question. Her face showed an awkward expression. Her eyes slid around and finally fell on a plate of bright and attractive cherries. Chapter 48. Baiji, look, the cherry from the vassal state is so cute. How about this? In the last round, we will be each other's target and put the cherry on top of our heads. I will stand under this scarecrow. If Child Wan can shoot the cherry on my head, Child Wan will win. Before he finished, Ningxu suddenly smiled shyly. However, Child Wan, I am really sorry. Before the game, I have to tell you the truth. In fact, I did boast just now. My maid's archery is really good, but it is the first time in my life that I have touched a bow and arrow. If I accidentally hurt you later, I hope you will forgive me. What? Wan Chang'an's eyes widened instantly, and his face was full of anger. Wan Chang'an was about to blame her for setting a trap for him, but he heard Ningxu frankly 1 step ahead. In order to prevent Child Wan from mistakenly thinking that I deliberately set a trap to deceive you, you will go first and I will be the target. If Child Wan dares to compete, then come. Others heard and sneered at her, mocking her for overestimating herself. If she shot first, she could threaten Wan Chang'an with it. If Wan Chang'an came first, she, Ningxu, would be the fish on the chopping board waiting to be slaughtered. Wouldn't it be all up to Wan Chang'an? Even Wan Chang'an looked at her in confusion. He was not sure if Ningxu was crazy. However, he heard Ningxu whisper in a voice that only the 2 of them could hear. Child Wan, rest assured. As long as Ningxu is alive later, the game will be played to the end. After that, she smiled and put the red and attractive cherry on top of her head, and walked to the scarecrow without fear in everyone's eyes. Wan Chang'an was sluggish for a moment, and suddenly his brain exploded. He suddenly understood what Ningxu was playing. If he won and she was safe and sound, then she, who had already shown that she was rusty in archery, would accidentally shoot him with an arrow, and others could not blame her. After all, she had already explained everything. He took the initiative to accept the game, and his death had nothing to do with her. But what if he lost? If he lost to a woman today, he would definitely lose face in the entire capital, and be ridiculed by countless people. Moreover, her words earlier had clearly hinted to him that even if he intentionally missed and injured her, as long as she was still alive, she would still pick up the bow and arrow and kill him. He finally saw clearly that she was not competing with him in archery, but in courage. She Ningshu was not afraid of death, but did Ruanchang, and have the guts to kill in front of the empress, old Princess Consort Yu, and half of the city's nobles? He Ruanchang, and had always boasted himself as the #1 playboy in the capital. There was nothing he didn't dare to play or compete with. But for the first time, he felt cold sweat all over his body. That feeling was called fear. Therefore, in today's match, even if he won, he would still lose. If he lost, he would still lose. The best way was to not compete at all. Today's weather was really beautiful. The bright sun shone down directly from the top of Ruanchang, An's head, causing fine beads of sweat to form on his forehead. The bowstring in his hand was stretched into a curved arc, and the iron arrowhead reflected a dazzling light. However, his hands that were pulling the bow were silently trembling in a place that no one could see. After a long time, the patience of the onlookers gradually ran out, and they all stuck their heads out to see why young Master Ruan had not shot the arrow. After a long while, they heard him let out a roar. He threw the bow in anger. No one would have guessed that there would be a day when the insufferably arrogant Ruanchang and would take the initiative to admit defeat. And the person he admitted defeat to was the infamous young Miss Ning. They heard Ning Shu, who was just a fish on the chopping block, take the tempting cherry on top of her head unhurriedly, put it in her mouth, and spit out a pearl-like core. Then she raised her head and smiled slowly at Ruanchang and, "Young Master Ruan should be able to accept defeat, right?" Chapter 49. Ruanchang unclenched his fist and said through gritted teeth, "What questions? Ask away." Ning Shu asked the first question. "I heard that young Master Ruan is the most straightforward person in the capital. If someone offends you, you will teach that person a lesson. Is that true?" He thought it was a question, but it was just nonsense. Ruanchang immediately showed a disdainful expression and said proudly, "Of course it is. Otherwise, how can I be called master in the capital?" Ning Shu blinked in surprise. But I heard that there was someone who spoke rudely to you, but you didn't dare to touch him. Instead, you let him off lightly." Ruanchang frowned. "Who are you talking about?" Ning Shu showed a mocking expression and said calmly, "Half a month ago, on the pleasure boat at the Moon Lake, you wanted to take away a female singer, but was stopped by someone. You were even scolded by the other party for being shameless, but he was let go. Isn't that true?" Ruanchang opened his eyes wide and retorted, "Nonsense. I clearly..." Ruanchang was just about to say the rest of his words, but after all, his brain wasn't just filled with hay. Ruanchang hurriedly stopped, then snorted twice and glared at her maliciously. "I know why you're here today. I have already answered 3 of your questions. I won't say it again. Get out of my way." Ning Shu laughed. "Young Master Ruan, you can think about it carefully. The question in the middle was asked by you, not me, so you still owe me a question. Why don't you dare to say it? Is it because you are guilty?" Ruanchang's expression was even more vicious. "What am I guilty of?" Ning Shu's eyes were burning. "Guilty of young Master Yun of Imperial Censor Yun. The serious illness was actually caused by you. The hottest news in the capital recently was that young Master Cloud Leaf of Imperial Censor Yun's family suddenly fell seriously ill. Outside, it was said that it was caused by a female ghost. The rumors were very vivid. But what did she mean by that? Was it related to Ruanchang? Exposed to so many curious and questioning gazes, Ruanchang panicked and said, "You, what nonsense are you talking about?" Ning Shu continued, "If you are not guilty, why is young Master Ruan stuttering? I always thought that 4th young Master Ruan was a man who dared to take responsibility for his actions, but I didn't expect him to be so wrong. I really looked down on him. What kind of man am I going to be in this life? I might as well castrate myself and serve His Majesty. That would be considered as fulfilling my loyalty to the country." Young Master Ruan's manners did not disappoint Ning Shu. Ruanchang's eyes, "Young Master Ruanchang's," he shouted. "Young Master, I am not. And I Chang Aza, I Chang. I have indeed dealt with him, but firstly, I did not beat him, and secondly, I did not kill him. I only threw him into Phoenix stage, where he is still unconscious. This is all because he offended the ghost of the previous dynasty's Empress Xiaozhou, so he received his punishment. When Assistant Minister Ruan heard the news, he squeezed into the crowd and slapped Ruan Chong and had already said the most terrifying words. A stone raises 1,000 ripples. The answer was so shocking that even Ning Shu did not expect it. The words Empress Zhou of the previous dynasty attracted the Empress, who was admiring the flowers with old Princess Yu from afar. The Empress, who had always been gentle and graceful, had a cold expression on her face and was furious. "Young Master Ruan, how dare you talk nonsense? Come, shut him up." Then her gaze quickly fell on Ning Shu. The Empress smiled without any warmth. "You are Ning Shu? Come with me to the palace for a chat." Chapter 50. Some words couldn't be said. And even if they were said, they couldn't be heard by the other person. Very quickly, Consort Nguyen's younger brother threw Imperial Censor Yun's son into Phoenix Terrace out of jealousy, disturbing the vengeful spirit of Empress Zhou of the previous dynasty. The news of him being killed by the vengeful spirit spread throughout the capital. The matter had already surfaced. It turned out that night, Ruan Chong, and then the imperial uncle's second son, Chao Huayu, and the other young masters were drinking and enjoying themselves. When the boat reached the moon-embracing lake, they suddenly heard a woman's extremely pleasant voice. The young masters all had some romantic thoughts. Ruan Chong and volunteered to invite her. But he didn't expect that not only did he not invite her, he was also scolded badly by a weak scholar. At that time, he wanted to beat him up, but he had an iron-toothed imperial censor as a father. If he really beat him up, it would be even more embarrassing in court. After returning, Ruan Chong and was really angry, so Chao Huayu gave him this rotten idea. They would drug Cloudleaf and send him to the abandoned Phoenix Terrace to give him a good scare. They didn't expect that this scare would really happen. However, the two debauches were satisfied and thought that it was a ghost causing trouble. Cloudleaf deserved to be seriously ill and had nothing to do with them. It was just that during the kidnapping that night, the Chao family's guards accidentally lost the jade pendant. The two debauches were slightly worried, so they secretly sent someone to the Yun residence to steal the jade pendant back. Old Princess Yu didn't expect that the 3 words Empress Zhou, which had been forgotten for 25 years, would actually return to the capital in this way. Below her, the 13th princess, who had always been taken care of by her, asked intimately, "Who is that Empress Zhou? Why was Imperial Mother so angry at that time?" And immediately threw Ruan Chong and into prison and summoned that Ning Shu into the palace. Old Princess Yu gently stroked her soft hair. At that time, the people all said that the current empress's family was Jingzhou's Chao family. However, in the past 25 years, who didn't know that the Zhou clan of Jianzhou was truly a noble clan? Compared to the Zhou clan, the Chao clan was simply not worth mentioning. The Zhou family of Jianzhou had been passed down for 800 years, spanning 3 dynasties without declining. It had produced 21 prime ministers, 6 empresses, and many other officials, both high and low, like carps crossing the river. None of the members of the imperial family with the surname Xiao could guarantee that they did not have a trace of the Zhou family's blood on them. When it was at its peak, most of the court officials stood on the Zhou family's side. This kind of honor and favor rose to the peak when it reached the late emperor. The first empress of the late emperor was from the Zhou family, but that empress was unlucky and died of illness before the age of 30. Shortly after, the former emperor took a second woman from the Zhou family into the palace. When she first entered the palace, she was first conferred the title of noble lady according to the ancestral rules. Later, she was endlessly favored by the emperor. In just a few years, she was promoted to noble consort. This speed of promotion shocked the entire harem. In another year, she would give birth to a prince and sit firmly on the throne of the empress. No one would be able to stop her. The former emperor was tightly controlled by her. Even though she was no longer young, the former emperor still spent millions to build this Phoenix Terrace for her when she was 40 years old. When Phoenix Terrace was completed, it attracted the worship of countless people. Because there was already an Empress Zhou before her, the people respected her as Empress Zhou. Old Princess Yu was still feeling unwell, and started coughing after speaking for a while. The 13th princess hurriedly served her tea. Old Princess Yu took 2 sips and continued speaking. Her old eyes seemed to have returned to the glorious and bloody scene from more than 20 years ago, along with the slightly hoarse voice. It's already rare for a woman to have a good background, and it's even rarer for her to have a world-toppling appearance. If she also has outstanding intelligence, then the heavens really pity her. Empress Zhou is such a woman. When the former emperor trusted her the most, not only did he allow her to participate in politics, he was even willing to hold her hand and sit on the dragon throne together. The 13th princess asked curiously, "Isn't that very impressive? But why have I never heard Imperial Father mention this empress?" Old Princess Yu's voice was incomparably aged. Because no one would have thought that such a glorious Empress Zhou would suddenly go crazy 25 years ago. She was so crazy that she didn't recognize her own family and lost her mind. She was so crazy that she personally killed the crown prince at that time. Then, she used that blood-stained sword to kill over 100 palace maids and guards in the Phoenix Algae Palace. She didn't even let off her own daughter who was only a few years old. In the end, she burned herself to death in Phoenix Terrace. And because the former emperor was too grief-stricken, he also passed away not long after. Everyone said that the former emperor was too deeply in love with her, and couldn't bear to see her lonely in the Yellow Springs, so he specially went to accompany her. Of course, there's also a guess that he didn't dare to say. Old Princess Yu almost blurted out the following words, but fortunately, she stopped in time. The 13th princess was so shocked that she took a deep breath and muttered, "Such a terrifying thing actually happened. That Ning Shu exposed the matter to this extent, is she?" Old Princess Yu nodded lightly and sighed. "Yes, terrifying things happen in every dynasty and every generation. I'm afraid that little girl from the Ning family won't be able to survive." Chapter 51. In the Phoenix Algae Palace. Although she was nearly 50 years old, Empress Chao's face was still well maintained. Not a single wrinkle could be seen. The 9 phoenix hairpins were inserted into her hair like phoenix wings, making her face look extremely luxurious. She smiled slightly and looked at Ning Shu, who was kneeling under the steps with tolerance. "When you were 5 years old, you followed He Xian into the palace. I saw you. You were very smart and cute at that time. I have no children. When I saw you, I thought how happy I would be if I could give birth to a little princess like you. In addition to being cute, you are also very smart." At that time, Consort Qi wanted to punish Uni, and deliberately sent someone to frame him for stealing the golden hairpin. I didn't expect you to clear Uni's suspicion with a few words. It also made me pay attention to that poor child and bring him to my knees to raise. The Empress's voice was gentle and soothing, like a warm elder looking at a child who had just made a mistake. But the last sentence suddenly became cold. "It's just that, I thought you were bold in the past. I didn't expect you to be even bolder now." Ning Shu quietly knelt on the cold and hard golden bricks, motionless. She had expected that this case would greatly offend the Empress and Consort Gui. But in the end, it involved the secret of the previous dynasty, which was really beyond her expectations. She was a daughter of an aristocratic family. She might be treated as a treasure by the elders in the mansion. But once she stepped out of the mansion, in front of the Empress, there were countless people in the capital. She was like a grain of sand in front of the high and mighty Empress. She would turn into a puddle of light ash when she lifted her foot. No matter where the breeze blew, her existence in this life would vanish. The sweat on her forehead pattered on the golden bricks in front of her, leaving a deep mark, like a drop of blood splashed. Ning Shu knelt down deeply and braced herself to say, "Empress, I didn't mean to target you. I just wanted to save my former husband, Cloud Leaf, to repay our previous friendship." Empress Chao looked at her coldly. "Since you have investigated all the way, you must know about the jade pendant engraved with my Chao family's emblem. Are you deliberately going against me?" She had just revealed a trace of killing intent when she heard some noise from outside the hall. "Who is outside?" A palace maid came in to report. "Nyang Nyang, His Highness the 6th Prince requests an audience." Empress Chao frowned unhappily. Tell him that I don't want to see him today. The matter of suppressing the bandits in Mount Flamebreath is not over yet. Tell him to come see me after he finishes his business." The palace maid immediately retreated upon receiving the order. Not long after, she turned back and timidly reported, "Nyang nyang. His Highness said that if you don't see him, he will kneel outside the door." Originally, the Empress's expression was still quite indifferent. She didn't expect that when she heard this, she suddenly let out a low laugh. "I was still hesitating whether to kill you or not, but Yun-Yi, that child, has always been sensible and has never dared to disobey me. You are the exception. Since last year he has often come to beg me to grant you a marriage, but I have already refused twice. A few days ago, your marriage with Cloudleaf fell through, and he came to me again. Now he was playing this game with me again. It seems that if I don't punish you, it will be unreasonable." She gently turned the jade ring inlaid with gems and slowly said, "I'm afraid you don't know that although the Imperial Palace is dazzling with gold and jade everywhere, there is actually no place that hasn't been stained with blood. For example, this Phoenix Algae Palace is where you are kneeling now. It is the place where Empress Zhou beheaded the crown prince of the previous dynasty 25 years ago." Ningshu's heart suddenly jumped, and she instantly understood what she meant. She was ready to make a move. "Xiaoqing! Xiaoqing!" Chapter 52. Kaiju. Empress Chao's voice had just sounded when a palace maid outside the hall reported, "Nyang nyang, the heir of the South Pacifying King has arrived." Ningshu's heart, which had almost jumped out of her chest, was finally able to catch her breath. Everyone knew that among the nephews of the next generation, the Empress favored Xiaoqing the most. Hearing his arrival, Empress Chao's cold face suddenly relaxed a bit. She withdrew her sharpness and said with a faint smile, "It's rare for him to come. Invite him in." The thick vermilion door slowly opened. A gust of spring wind first slipped through the crack in the door, sweeping a corner of a black cloak embroidered with dark red sandalwood patterns into the hall. Then it was his boot that leisurely stepped over the threshold. A green jade hairpin tied up a portion of his black hair. The rest of it hung behind him, blowing in the wind. There was no need to look at his face to feel that he was full of charm. Xiaoqing's expression was extremely calm. When he passed by Ningshu, he didn't even pause. With Jussi's support, he walked directly to the Empress. Empress Chao brushed her sleeves and warmly said, "Heir was summoned by His Majesty to accompany the Empress. How come you have the time to come to this Empress's place?" Xiaoqing used his most usual cold voice to say, "I happened to hear that someone was extremely daring and offended the Empress, so I came to ask Nyang Nyang to kill her." She thought he was going to say something, but she didn't expect it to be this. Empress Chao's eyes flashed. She seemed to be in deep thought. Then she slowly let out a sigh. "But now the entire capital knows. Is there any use in killing her?" Xiaoqing thought for a moment before casually saying, "Since there's no use, then leave her life to atone for her crimes. After all, to be able to investigate to this extent, she doesn't sound like a piece of trash." After entering the hall for so long, he was finally willing to give her a bit of his attention. The tip of his foot lightly kicked her leg. "Are you stupid? Tell me what you think." Ningshu suddenly reacted and heard her heart thumping. She hurriedly took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. She spoke to the Empress in a clear voice. "There are two obvious explanations for this case. First, it's really because of the wronged spirit of Empress Zhou. Cloudleaf offended Empress Zhou's resting place, so Empress Zhou showed up and poisoned it. Second, Ruan Chang'an held a grudge against Cloudleaf for offending Cloudleaf, so he and others conspired." She tactfully avoided mentioning Chao Huayu's name and continued, "They poisoned Cloudleaf together, and used the rumor of the wronged spirit of Empress Zhou in Phoenix Terrace as a cover to clear their names." Hearing her unfinished words, the Empress slowly said, "You still have an unobvious guess?" Ningshu nodded. "Yes, Ruan Chang'an can use Empress Zhou as a cover. Similarly, someone can also use Ruan Chang'an as a cover." The Empress slightly leaned down the stairs. "You mean half a month ago someone happened to have insight into the conflict between Ruan Chang'an and Cloudleaf, So they quietly followed them and took the opportunity to attack Cloud Leaf and then frame Ruan Chang'an. Your Majesty is wise. Ningxu sincerely bowed. I can't be sure, but it's possible. I always feel that there are a lot of strange things in this matter. Although Ruan Chang'an is physically developed, his brain is. Even if he wants to take revenge on Cloud Leaf, he can use many methods. At the very least, he can kill him and throw him directly into the mass grave. As long as the mouth is sealed, or simply spend money to buy a scapegoat, everything will be clean. Why would he go in such a big circle to throw him to Phoenix Terrace and then kill him? Isn't it superfluous? In addition, I asked Cloud Leaf's personal servant. At that time, they found Cloud Leaf by the moon-luring lake. If the two young masters really wanted to kill him, the shorter the contact time, the harder it is to be discovered. Why would they go through so much trouble to send him to Phoenix Terrace, and then back to moon-luring lake? This really doesn't make sense. Her voice was very calm, but she methodically unraveled the suspicious points in the case one by one. The Empress obviously listened. What you said makes some sense. Is there anything else? Ningxu's mind was like driving a precise water wheel. She kept thinking because she knew that any word she said could be the rope that could save her life. Chapter 53. Also, the singer who caused the dispute that night disappeared that night. According to her friends on the boat, she came to the capital to find a friend. After the dispute that night, she got the news from her friend and went out. If it was Ruan Chang, and who set her up to take revenge, how did he know that Nainu came to the capital to find someone? So based on the above points, I think that Ruan Chang and might not be behind this case. After she finished speaking, the entire hall was silent. The Empress' eyes fell on her silently, changing unpredictably. Just as a drop of cold sweat was about to fall from Ningxu's forehead, the Empress chuckled and slowly got up from the phoenix chair, walking down the steps to stand in front of her. This little mouth is really as cute as before. Forget it, Hexin and Duke Ning also had great achievements in the court. This time, for their sake, I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself. Remember, if you can't solve this case smoothly, don't blame me for having to get rid of you. Coming out of the hall, Ningxu suddenly realized that her back was wet and cold. The moment the vermilion door opened, Xiao Yuni, who had been kneeling outside the hall, immediately got up to walk towards her, his eyes brightening. But the Empress' voice came from inside the hall. He paused, seeming to hesitate, but still decided to enter the hall first. When they brushed past each other, Xiao Yuni whispered in her ear, "Wait for me for a while." "Thank you, Your Highness, for pleading leniency for me. This little girl is very grateful, but this little girl still has matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first." Ningxu bowed to him solemnly and politely, then walked down the steps. Xiao Yuni immediately caught up, his eyebrows furrowed. "Why don't you believe that I have you in my heart?" Ningxu sighed softly. "Your Highness, I helped you once when you were 5 years old. You mistakenly thought that you had me in your heart, but it was just a long-term illusion caused by a moment of emotion. Your Highness, so many years have passed, you should wake up. When you meet the Fei Luan I'm talking about, you will immediately understand. It's not like that, listen to me." He hurriedly chased after her, but the palace maid's voice sounded again. "Your Highness, Her Highness is waiting for you." Because of that moment of hesitation, he was no longer able to catch up. He looked in the direction that Ningxu had left and clenched his fists. Then, he gritted his teeth and turned to step into the Empress' palace. After completely leaving the territory of the Phoenix Algae Court, Ningxu finally heaved a sigh of relief. Xia Hoqing was the first to leave the hall with Jisie's help. He was waiting for her under a winding corridor. Wisteria was planted on the porch, and strings of purple flowers fell through the gaps in the roof and stopped above his head. Behind him were rows and rows of golden tiles and red walls of varying heights. They were obviously very warm colors, but it gave people a sense of awe as if it was too cold at the top. She lifted the corner of her skirt and quickly walked a few steps to his side. She glanced sideways at the Crown Prince, who seemed to be unhappy because he had waited for her for a long time, and said, "Your Highness came in just in time." She didn't say that she had arrived in time, but that she had arrived in time. Xiaoqing immediately understood the meaning behind her words. He said, "How did you know that I had been waiting outside the Empress Palace? Your Highness has the scent of the duheng incense that you often use in your room. Although it is relatively faint, I am born with a keen sense of smell." Ningxu was very resentful. He had clearly guessed that she would spend every day in there like a year, but he had chosen the right time to come in. This wicked taste that could not be changed made people break down. That's right, he had also taken the opportunity to kick her. Xiaoqing raised the corner of his lips and spat out 3 words, "Dog nose." He then said, "You told me before that a small rotten idea had taken shape. I didn't think it would be so rotten." Ningxu rubbed the tip of her nose and said helplessly, "Although it is very rotten, Your Highness, don't you think that this is the only way at present? Facts have proven that it is effective." The Empress had known long ago, and it was hard to guarantee that His Majesty did not know a thing or two. However, no one stood out to expose it. This meant that from top to bottom, everyone wanted to cover up this matter. Therefore, the only thing she could do was to force the truth out of Ruan Chang, Anne's mouth in public in front of countless pairs of ears. Only by making this matter impossible to cover up could she break out of this situation. Otherwise, when the imperial court slowly found out in secret, Cloudleaf's bones would have turned into ashes. Chapter 54. Jiuxi pulled out a thin bamboo cane from his waist and offered it to Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing took it and slowly walked side by side with Ningxu in the corridor. This corner of the imperial palace was very quiet. It was so quiet that there was only the sound of the wind blowing and the falling flowers and the bamboo cane in his hand lightly tapping on the stone floor. As the wind blew, light purple vine flowers fell on their shoulders. Ningxu brushed them away and unconsciously reached out to help him. She suddenly thought of something and pulled her hand back. She thought to herself, "It's best not to be meddlesome and be misunderstood by him." Xiaoqing seemed to sense something. His eyebrows moved slightly, but the fluctuation was too fast and too shallow. Before he could catch it, it had already disappeared without a trace. He opened his mouth and continued, "Guess why the Empress was so angry today? Was it because you found out that the case was related to the Chao family, or something else?" Ningxu picked up a vine flower and slowly kneaded it in her palm. She thought for a moment. Just now, she specifically mentioned that Empress Zhou killed the crown prince of the previous dynasty. Based on this speculation, it should be because of a secret matter of the previous dynasty. Xiaoqing nodded. Right now, the entire capital is saying that Empress Zhou's ghost is haunting, and that Cloudleaf is guilty. Then what is her method of punishment? Cloudleaf was hit by a plum blossom kiss. The implication is that Empress Zhou's harem had a plum blossom kiss back then, and the previous emperor died from this poison. This relationship is the reason why the Empress wanted to kill you just now. After hearing Xiaoqing's words, Ningxu's expression suddenly became cold. The secret she had been looking for had unexpectedly rushed to her in this way. If this was really the case, then didn't that mean that the person who had been circling her since she was 10 years old and thinking of ways to torture her was also someone from the palace? Then what about Xiaoqing? Was the poison in his body also from that person? There seemed to be a dark shadow controlling everything from behind, stirring up the chessboard, and stirring it into an unfathomable abyss. She was stunned for a moment before she was awakened by Xiaoqing's voice. "What other doubts did you not mention in the Phoenix Algae Palace?" Ningxu somewhat admired him. Her mind was already filled with a storm of blood, but he could still remain calm and composed. Indeed, he had good willpower. Poison. In this world, there were many things that could poison people to death, such as hooks, poisoned arrowwood, arsenic, and so on. If it was purely to vent his hatred, he could have used any of the above poisons. Why did Ruan Chang and choose to use this secret poison? That was the thing that killed the previous emperor. It was a secret of the royal family that could not be said. Even if his sister is now the imperial consort, he wouldn't have the guts to touch such a thing unless he's crazy. Ningxu shrugged. Of course, I can't guarantee that there's a 1 in 10,000 chance that he's really crazy. Just pretend I didn't say anything. But for now, other than being a little stupid, His mental state is still normal. Xia Hoqing raised another point. What was Ninu's role in this matter? Ningxu nodded in agreement. Yes, she was just an insignificant geisha on the moon-seizing lake. Why would they do something to her? That night, did she see something? But it's still the same question. How did the person who did it know that she was looking for someone? In short, this mystery is very difficult for me to understand. I'm afraid that only by finding Miss Ninu can we solve this mystery, His Highness the Crown Prince ordered. So your task now is to immediately go and find her. Although she had this intention, couldn't he at least let her rest for a while? After all, she almost died for the 8th time. However, who told her to owe more and more favors? She didn't have the right to bargain, so she could only accept her fate and continue to work like a cow. Jin Sheng was still waiting for Xia Hoqing to accompany him. So Ningxu left first. When she was about to leave, Ningxu suddenly thought of something. She turned her head and asked, Your Highness the Crown Prince, if I do my best and still can't find the secret of the plum blossom kiss, will you really let me be buried with you? I won't. Xia Hoqing's light-colored thin lips softly spat out these 2 words. The unexpected answer made Ningxu extremely happy. So His Highness the Crown Prince was so magnanimous. It was her who gauged the heart of a gentleman with her own mean measure. But she heard Xia Hoqing continue to speak, his words full of sarcasm. After death, I can only accept lying with another person unless that person is someone very close to me. You? The black tortoise outside my tomb is still lacking a person. Ningxu immediately disregarded her manners and angrily rolled her eyes. Chapter 55. Just as she was about to step out of the palace gates, a small eunuch hurriedly ran over from behind her. Is this the Ning family's eldest young miss? Please wait a moment, Imperial Consort Nyang Nyang will be here shortly. Consort Nguyen. After seeing one, she really couldn't escape the other. Ai, this little ant's fate was truly lowly. Ningxu hurriedly bowed with a smile. Imperial Consort Nyang Nyang has something to tell me. This little girl will respectfully comply. Fortunately, Consort Nguyen wasn't too arrogant and quickly arrived on a carriage. Greetings to Imperial Consort Nyang Nyang. When she raised her head and saw her, she felt her eyes light up. She really was a beauty. Her entire body exuded a gentle and amiable temperament, which was very compatible with the Guanyin statue in the Buddhist temple. She was only in her early 20s, and her soft clothes gently protected her slightly bulging belly. Her hibiscus-like beautiful face and the embroidered white hibiscus on her golden-pink large sleeves made for a splendid scene. She didn't even need to speak to know that she was in a flourishing age. Ningxu thought to herself that at such a young age, she had to face the emperor who was older than her father. She really didn't know if she was lucky or unlucky. However, from Consort Nguyen's complexion, she didn't seem to be unhappy. No wonder it was said that if a woman in the imperial harem wanted to maintain their beauty, the best nourishment was power. Unlike the empress's threat to her life, Consort Nguyen was much more gentle. She even had a bit of guilt on her face. I've already heard about the absurd things my younger brother did. My heart is filled with guilt. Just now, the Empress sent someone to tell me that she has given you full authority to investigate this case. If there's anything I can help with, please let me know. I definitely won't ignore this matter, nor will I be biased towards my family. As for the Yun family, please pass on my apologies. Afterwards, I will personally go to the Yun family to apologize to them. Don't worry, Imperial Consort. This little girl will definitely pass on your apologies. Ningxu bent her knees and saluted. Her watercolored skirt fell to the ground, like the ripples caused by fresh rain falling into a pond. She was the clear and transparent raindrop on the ripples. Consort Nguyen beckoned for her to come closer. Her watery eyes were smiling as she looked at her. If I had a younger sister who was as quiet and beautiful as you, I don't know how much less worry I would have. Unfortunately, I don't have this good fortune. I only have a younger brother who is extremely mischievous. Every time I hear people talk about his various misdeeds, it makes me feel ashamed and speechless. Consort Nguyen heaved a long sigh. Ningxu hurriedly replied with a smile. As the saying goes, a prodigal son turning over a new leaf is more precious than gold. When they were young, Xiang and Ningwu were also mischievous and absurd. Later on, they suddenly repented and worked hard to study. Just like before, they won the praise of 10,000 people. Fourth young master is still young. In a few years, Consort Nguyen will also have a whole new level of respect for him. The Consort Nguyen really knew how to praise people. One moment, they had a daughter like her, and the next moment, they had a younger sister like her. She only hoped that when the case was solved in the future, if the result was not to their liking, they would remember their words today and be a little merciful to her. Girl, you really have a sweet mouth. Come, I have a bracelet for you. Consort Nguyen didn't know if she was trying to bribe her or if she really liked her. But she specially took off a golden bracelet inlaid with jade stones from her wrist and gave it to her. Ningxu thanked her and respectfully sent off Consort Nguyen's sedan chair. It lifted up and disappeared into the layers of golden tiles and red walls. Finally, after acting like a grandson, Ningxu rubbed her waist that had been bent for the entire day. It was really sore. Since Ningxu was summoned to the palace by the empress, Forsythia and Huema had been guarding outside the palace gate. There were several other masters who had entered the palace as well. Some of their servants who were waiting outside saw that Huema, who was dressed in women's clothing, was very charming and dared to flirt with him. Huema used all his strength to restrain himself from punching them. He scowled and hid far away. He crossed his arms and leaned against the wall, making a posture that kept people 1,000 miles away. But when his arms just crossed his chest, he was touched by the 2 extra lumps on his chest. He then uncomfortably dropped his hands to his side. There were only 2 words in his mind. I want to die. I want to die. So when they saw Ningxu come out, they both breathed a sigh of relief. One was finally relieved, and the other was finally not going to die. Forsythia, go back to the Duke's residence and report to father and mother. Let them be at ease. Oh right, go to Zigui and ask him if there are any discoveries in the Yun residence recently. Forsythia nodded and went to do it. Huema's face was still dark. What about me? Ningxu said, accompany me to drink wine with girls. Huema's dark face suddenly turned red, and he was a little shy. He was picked up by Shitzi when he was a few years old, and began to be trained in the prince's residence. There were many rules in the prince's residence, and Shitzi didn't like the pretentious maidservants around him. So he had not had intimate contact with a few girls. Previously, he heard from other guards that there were girls who were fragrant and soft, which made him very jealous. But Shi and Jussi and the others always said that he was still young and should keep himself clean. He didn't expect that he would have such a good thing when he just started to follow Lady Ning. He was a little excited when he thought about it. Suddenly, he felt that cross-dressing was not so abominable. Ningxu looked at him up and down and sneered. Don't worry, accompany me to watch others drink wine with girls. We are going to ask about the case. Why don't you go? The little flame of excitement was instantly extinguished. Chapter 56. That wretched girl keeps her mouth shut all day long. She's not close to anyone. Who knows who she's looking for? Although Huemo changed into men's clothes, his face was still covered with baiji. Even if he couldn't eat pork, he still wanted to see a pig run. He followed Ningxu to the most famous pleasure boat on the moon-luring lake. He didn't expect to see an old brothel owner instead of a beauty. He suddenly withered. The brothel owner said while trimming her nails, I only know that she came from Qingzhou. 3 months ago, she came to my pleasure boat to perform. Then she said that she came to the capital to look for someone. People like us who hang around in the entertainment industry, who doesn't have a lot of troubles. She doesn't like to talk about it, and I don't like to ask. As long as she can make money for me, it's fine. Ningxu was very patient. Then are the things in Ninu's room still there? Can you let us see it? The brothel owner pointed at it and said, she's gone. Why should I keep her room? She packed it all up and threw it in the utility room. You go in and find the blue bag. Under the guidance of the brothel owner, Ningxu found the bag. The bag was very small. It could be seen at a glance because there was nothing valuable in it. There were only a few old clothes and used rouge and powder, which no one wanted. Huiyemo stepped forward and carefully checked it several times, but he didn't find anything. Then he shook his head at Ning Shu in disappointment. Ning Shu was prepared. She looked at the brothel owner. Where are her papers and other things? The brothel owner was angry when she thought of this. She must have planned it early that night and took it away. I remember that I locked it in the cupboard. I don't know when she stole it. I trusted her so much. She's really heartless. Ning Shu frowned. It seemed that the other party was very careful. If she didn't investigate the cloud leaf case, no one would find that a singer on the moon-luring lake disappeared silently, as if she had never existed. But this also reflected that Ninu was definitely hiding a huge secret, and it was very likely that she was the key to solving this case. She lowered her head and thought for a moment. Then she remembered. I remember last time I heard from my mother that she put her family heirloom as collateral with you. Can you let me have a look? All right, just you wait. The procuress went to her room and searched for a long time before coming back. Here, it's just a thin bracelet. It's less than 5 qian worth of gold. Only these gems are worth a little money. She even coaxed me that it was passed down from her ancestors and was very important to her. I really believed her nonsense. Ning Shu took the bracelet and looked at it carefully. It was just an ordinary bracelet. Poor people might treat it as a treasure, but in the capital, it was not enough. It was quite old, but the style was still somewhat exotic. However, he couldn't find out more information from it. Taking back the bracelet, the procuress said lazily, "That's all I know. If you want to know anything else, you can ask Chun Yang. I have more than a dozen girls on this boat, but I only saw her occasionally chatting with Ninu." Then may I ask where Miss Chun Yang is? Ning Shu was looking for her. The procuress said, "Just now, a very powerful master came to the lake. All the famous girls on the moon-embracing lake took the initiative to board his boat. Chun Yang was also among them." Ning Shu was curious. Who has such a big face? There were more than a dozen famous girls on the moon-embracing lake. How big of a show of extravagance was it to invite so many girls? When the god of wealth was mentioned, the procuress laughed. "It's not a big face, it's a big money." The imperial bodyguard who came only said one sentence. "His master invited you. 100 taels per person. You don't need to do anything else. You only need to play the zither, sing and dance. If you are willing, come." When the girls heard this, they all rushed to board the boat. There were too many people, and one of them was almost squeezed into the lake. Do you know who this master is? He is the richest man in the capital, Prince Kukua. Ning Shu looked in the direction pointed by the procuress. Sure enough, she saw a gorgeous and dazzling big boat not far away. The word Ku on the boat was written in a flamboyant style. Especially the last stroke, it looked like a round copper coin. In contrast to the South Pacifying Lord's residence, Huimo's eyes were almost blinded by the golden light reflected from the boat. Wow, it's so extravagant. It's so arrogant. Chapter 57. Ning Shu and Huiyemo took a small boat to the big ship and introduced themselves to the guard on the ship. The guard quickly reported back and put down a ladder to invite them up. Huiyemo respectfully followed behind Ning Shu. The big ship looked dazzling from the outside, but the inside was even more luxurious. It was comparable to a palace. It really lived up to its owner's reputation as the #1 dandy in the capital city. Prince Kushao Jinglan was a weirdo in the capital city. He was Jin Sheng's youngest brother. 25 years ago, when the previous emperor passed away, he was just a few years old. After Jin Sheng ascended the throne, he was given the title of prince. He was the youngest and oldest prince in the dynasty. He was brought up by his elder sister, Princess Royal Xiaomingxue. At the age of 16, he left the Princess Royal Mansion to stand on his own. Until now, he was only 30 years old. He had countless private properties under his name. The Chasing Clouds and Chasing Moon house was built by him. He was handsome and charming. There was a mole under his eye that made him look like he was crying. Countless brothels and young women were attracted to him. The reason why he refused to get married was that he was afraid that after he married, the tears of all the women in the capital city would soak the entire palace. The most ridiculous thing he did was to play music for 3 days and 3 nights in front of the theater of the most famous actress in the capital city, Xiao Hongyan. Jin Sheng had a headache because of him, so he could only let him be. However, although this King Ke was absurd, he had never done anything like bullying others and disregarding human lives. As a result, his reputation in the capital was quite good. Ning Shu walked down the stairs. The third prince Xiao Yunyan, the fourth prince Xiao Yunsu, and the seventh prince Xiao Yunsen were also there. They accompanied Xiao Jinglan as they listened to music and chatted. Xiao Yunyan was the oldest and most prudent of the princes. He frowned all day long as if he was burdened with all the worries of the world. Don't you feel that the capital city is becoming more and more unpeaceful recently? Especially after Xiahou Shitzi came to the capital city. This feeling became stronger. When has our imperial city ever been peaceful? Third elder brother, you don't have to be so bitter all the time. Today, we came to little imperial uncle's place to relax. Let's not talk about those things. Xiao Yunsu leaned back and rested his elbows on the couch. As he enjoyed the song and dance, he took a sip of the wine that the beauty beside him fed him. He casually said, I heard that imperial father summoned Xiahou Qing to the palace today to choose a consort for him. Because of this, little 13th specially begged old Princess Yu to put in a good word for her in front of imperial mother. The 13th princess was Xiao Zhongping, the 13th princess. Xiao Yunsen was only 15 years old, and was the most playful of the princes. He would go wherever there was fun. He gossiped. Fourth brother, I remember that your cousin, the third miss of the Qi family, has also admired the heir of Xiahou for a long time. She has your mother as her backer, but I don't know who will win in the end. I feel that there will be new drama in our palace soon. This was what Ning Shu heard when she stepped into the cabin. She couldn't help but smile in schadenfreude. It seemed that Xiahou Qing would have a headache from now on. Thinking about it, he was looking forward to it. Beside him, Huema pouted in puzzlement. Shouldn't she be jealous? That night, he heard her confess her feelings to the heir of Xiahou Qing. Why did she look so interested in gossip now? A woman. She then heard Xiao Yunyan continue to sigh. Imperial father is extremely harsh towards us, his sons, but he is tolerant and forgiving towards these girls. He indulges them to the point that they are all beyond recognition. Xiao Yunsen giggled. Now that you mention it, I remember that 4 years ago, fifth sister took a fancy to the eldest young master of the Yun family, Yun Ruhui. She wanted him to be the emperor's son-in-law. He was so scared that he ran away to study abroad. He returned 3 years later, but fifth sister is really infatuated. She is still waiting for him after so many years. Concubine Shu was very anxious, but she couldn't persuade fifth sister. She could only condescend to ask him. Guess what? He said that when he was studying abroad, he secretly promised to marry a woman. Fifth sister cried in the palace for many days. At the end, Xiao Yunsen sighed and shook his head. Xiao Yunsen's phoenix-like eyes were full of disdain. She really has no sense of shame. Hearing this, Ning Shu frowned unhappily. She was so mean to her own sister, let alone others. Xiao Minglan, who had been silent all this time, leaned on the seat of a beauty and lazily said, I think that fifth sister is very courageous. She has tried everything. She will never regret it in this life. How delightful. He laughed heartily. The beauties around him giggled and fed him wine. Ning Shu had been waiting for a while. If she continued to listen, she would inevitably be suspected of eavesdropping. Thus she took the initiative to salute. Your Highnesses, please be at ease. Chapter 58. Finally noticing her presence, Xiao Minglan stood up from the group of beauties and looked at her curiously. You are the pearl of Duke Ning's family, Ning Shu that my nephew Yuni has been longing for? Ning Shu was speechless and smiled. The former is correct, but the latter is wrong. Your Highness Prince Ku, please don't tease me. I am a woman who has been married 3 times, so I am not afraid. However, if I drag His Highness down and affect his future marriage, it will not be good. Xiao Minglan laughed out loud. Then, with a casual toss, the string of top-grade Eastern pearls in his hand flew towards Ning Shu. You are an interesting girl. Here, this string of Eastern pearls is yours. Ning Shu caught it, and felt that the pearls in her palm were huge and smooth. A rich family was indeed rich. Their gifts were different. This string of pearls was worth at least 1,000 taels of silver. It was enough to buy a house in the capital. Then she could only accept it. Ning Shu thanked him respectfully. "Thank you, Your Highness." Beside her, Xiao Yunsu glanced at her and said with a smile that was not a smile, "I heard that you caused a ruckus at old Consort Yu's begonia gathering today and angered Imperial Mother. You actually managed to come out of Imperial Mother's palace alive. It seems like your life is quite tough." Ning Shu smiled but did not say anything. When she was 5 years old, the one who framed Xiao Yuni for stealing the golden hairpin was this prince's mother. It seemed that this prince was still holding a grudge. The people of the Xiao family were very narrow-minded. Xiao Yunsen did not understand what he meant. As usual, he was simple and straightforward. "Yes, she is quite capable." Previously, when Chen Zicheng brought soldiers to the duke's residence to arrest her, I saw with my own eyes that she refuted Chen Zicheng until he was speechless. That scene was really funny. Ning Shu had a good impression of this child. She said modestly, "Your Highness is too kind." Xiao Yunyan had heard of Ning Shu's name before, but this was the first time he had seen her in person. He carefully looked at her thin and small appearance in men's clothing and asked in bewilderment, "Does this mean that Imperial Mother handed the case to you?" Ning Shu replied, "Nyang Nyang ordered me to atone for my mistake by meritorious service. That's why I boarded the boat to find a Qin concubine related to the case to question her. Sorry to disturb everyone's refined mood. Would Your Highness Prince could please make an exception?" She then curtsied toward Xiao Minglan. Xiao Minglan was never one to be bothered by trifles. She waved her sleeves and said, "Ha ha ha, this is interesting. Go on, go on. You can take any of the Guqin girls with you." Upon seeing her, Chun Nyang, who was sitting in the corner playing the zither, revealed an expectant expression. She restrained herself and followed Ning Shu to an empty room before saying, "Has noble lady found Nainu?" Ning Shu shook her head and said, "Not yet. I asked young Master Ruan, who was offended by Nainu that night. He said that he was not responsible for Nainu's disappearance. I just asked the procuress. She said that Nainu was not close to others and only chatted with you occasionally. So I hope that you can tell me everything you know." Chun Yang's eyes darkened. She then sorted out her emotions and said slowly, 3 months ago, I boarded the pleasure boat with her. She was good at singing and I was good at playing the guqin. Although our skills were not in the same place, we were both from other places and were both alone in this huge capital. It was inevitable that we would be close. My family was so poor that we could not survive. That's why I was sold and came to the capital. I signed a death contract. But Nainu was different. She signed a life contract. She could redeem herself and leave once she saved enough money. I asked her, if you were not so poor that you could not survive, why did you board the pleasure boat? She said that she came to the capital to look for a good sister. That sister grew up with her. They were martial sisters who studied together. They were also friends who helped each other survive in adversity. 2 years ago, that sister came to the capital. At first, they were still in contact with each other. Then one day they suddenly stopped. After a month, she sent something to her. Since then, there was no news of her. She was very worried that something bad would happen to her. However, Qingzhou was thousands of miles away from the capital. Even if she worried, it would be useless. She saved money for a long time. Until 5 months ago, she finally saved enough money to redeem herself in Qingzhou. Then, she packed up her meager traveling expenses and came to the capital to look for someone. Then do you know the name of the sister she was looking for? I asked her once. She was stunned for a moment and did not say anything. I thought that she might have something that she could not say, so I did not ask again. If I had insisted on asking, perhaps now. Chun Yang's voice was choked with sobs. Chapter 59. Ning Shu took out a handkerchief and gave it to her. Did she tell you where she went, who she met, and how she wanted to find them? Chun Yang wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes with the handkerchief and sighed. Miss, you don't know. It's really too difficult for lowly women like us to find another person in the vast sea of people in the capital. When the officials see us, they don't even want to take a look at us. Ningshu guessed. So she entered the pleasure boat again and cooperated with the procuress to spread her name. That way, the people she wanted to find would go to the pleasure boat to find her when they heard her name? Chun Young nodded. That's right. I told her not to be too honest. Your sister might have left the capital long ago. If she stayed on the boat for too long, she might fall into the fire pit forever. Since you signed a living contract, you should find a chance to leave as soon as possible. People should live for themselves. However, she was very stubborn. She said that she must stay here and would not leave until she found her sister. I laughed at her for being stupid. I didn't expect. Chun Young's tears rolled down like a line. Did anyone come to find her recently? Chun Young shook her head. There were many people who came to find her. Most of them heard her name and wanted to hear her sing or take off her veil. There was no woman. Among so many people, was there anyone who left an impression on you? Nainu didn't mention it to me. Chun Young thought for a moment and suddenly thought of something. There was one. That night, not long after Nainu got off the boat, someone came to find her. At that time, my guest had just left and I happened to meet him. I said that Nainu had something to do and got off the boat. He was very anxious and asked me where she went. I said that I didn't know. He waited for about 15 minutes and left when he couldn't wait any longer. When he left, his expression was very. Chun Young couldn't find the right words and frowned. Finally, she caught an important message. Ningshu quickly asked, angry, irritated, nervous, anxious, or? Ningshu said word by word. Chun Young immediately said, anxious. Yes, he was anxious. When he left, he jogged all the way. I didn't think too much about it at the time, but now that I think about it, it feels like he had a premonition that something was going to happen to Nainu. Who is he? Do you know him? No, I don't. It was a young master, very handsome, and he left without saying anything. I've seen a lot of young masters on the boat, but I've rarely seen one with that kind of temperament. He's especially clean, and I feel that he doesn't fit in with our entertainment scene. I asked the others on the boat if they knew him. Then he heard from Xiao Chui, who was serving Nainu, that the young master came by a few days ago. Coincidentally, Nainu was invited by the Qian family to a concert, so she missed it. After Nainu went missing, that young master never came again. Chun Yang then described the person's appearance in detail. After listening to her description, something suddenly flashed through Ningshu's mind. She was stunned for a moment. What's wrong with being a noble? Do you know that young master? Chun Yang asked. Ningshu came back to her senses and said apologetically, it's nothing. I was just lost in thought for a moment. Do you have anything else you want to know? I've already told you everything I know. After Chun Yang finished, she was afraid that the men in front of her would be dissatisfied if they didn't get the money. So she hurriedly wiped her tears and went outside to serve. Before she left, Ningshu begged her again. Ningshu would try her best to appease her. After she left, Ningshu looked at the small portrait of Nainu that she had asked the brothel mother and others to draw. She showed a distressed expression. Guillermo was puzzled. Since there is a small portrait of Nainu, why don't we just take this small portrait and post it all over the street? Why do we have to check it one by one? Ningshu sighed. It's not that simple. At that time, I was able to find Wan Chang, and because of the red mole on his nose. But most people in the world don't have such distinctive features. Moreover, even the best artists can only draw a small portrait that is 60 to 70% similar. In our big capital, there are nearly 1 million people. There are at least a few dozen people who look similar. It's too blurry. He was born in Qingzhou. He set out to the capital 5 months ago. He traveled on a pleasure boat 3 months ago. He was good at singing. The identity of the sister he was looking for was unknown. She hadn't received any news for more than a year. How could she be sure that the sister must be in the capital? Half a month ago, she received a message. She got off the boat and went to the appointment without saying anything. When she left, she was very excited. How did she get in touch with the sister? After she left, there was a young master who looked for her. His identity was also unknown. Ning Shu dipped a little water and quietly wrote on the table. While writing, she sorted out the dead ends. When she wrote the last one, her fingertips paused. She drew a whole circle on it. Her clear eyes were full of deep thoughts. Then she wrote the word yin stroke by stroke. Why did the person Chun Yang mentioned look so similar to him? You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.